Yes, and good morning, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 10:02 a.m. And Executive Director Williams, could you do a roll call for us?
Yes. Vice President Burton? Here. Member Cantonese? Member Clark?
Here.
Member Clay?
Here.
Member Hagerman?
Here.
Member Haley?
Here.
Superintendent Hoffman?
Here.
Member Kravickas? Here. Member Meyerson?
Here.
Dr. Robbins? President Court?
Here.
You have a quorum, sir.
Thank you so much. I will just remind our three members who are with us virtually, particularly when there's a vote, to make sure your camera is on and you're unmuted so we can actually see you casting that vote. So again, glad you're with us, and I will move through my report and cede my time to the superintendent for her report, because I know we've got some special folks with us here today. Superintendent Hoffman.
Thank you, President Kaur. Good morning, board members and community members. First, I do have a slide presentation, but before beginning, I would like to do our land acknowledgement and to take a moment to respectfully acknowledge the geographical landscape of Maricopa County sits on the ancestral homelands of those indigenous nations that have inhabited this land for centuries, including the Pima, Lehigh, and Lavine peoples. Working on getting the slides up. We'd like to have a visual. There we go. Thank you. Go ahead to the next slide. So earlier, actually last month in May, we started to roll out the announcements around our funding allocations. We had a competitive grant process to allocate American Rescue Plan dollars. These are federal COVID relief funding dollars. And we worked through this grant process. We've been awarding both community-based organizations, our post-secondary institutions, as well as at the LEA level, to supplement and to help support our students to go above and beyond what we were already doing with our ESSER federal funds. And so we have been making these announcements on a rolling basis and trying to cluster them together. So I'm going to be highlighting some of those announcements here. The first announcement we made was around the organizations specifically supporting students' physical and mental well-being. So as you can see, there's a number of community-based organizations and post-secondary institutions. I'm happy to provide more information on any of these, but I would like to highlight briefly the Mindfulness First program, because I did recently have the opportunity to visit the David Crockett Elementary School in the Balt School District, where they do have a very transitional student population, many refugee and homeless students attending their school, and they've been partnering with Mindfulness First for about 6 years. And I have to say, it's probably the most Zen campus that I've ever visited. The students were self-initiating to ask for a mindful moment when they needed time to self-regulate. And the leaders there had commented, and the teachers, on how it's made a significant improvement in helping students with their behavior management and helping them to feel better, especially for kids that have gone through particular types of trauma. So that was really exciting to see that firsthand. And the teachers commented that it had even worked as a recruitment tool, because teachers wanted to work at this school where they're integrating the mindfulness techniques throughout their school day. Next slide. Having worked in special education for a number of years, I was really excited to be able to fund the Autism United, as well as the Special Olympics in Arizona. The Special Olympics is receiving $1.4 million to expand their Unified Champion Schools program, and the Arizona Autism United is receiving $300,000 specifically to expand speech and language services, as well as these community organizations supporting students' literacy skills. So you can see those there. We can go to the next slide. A couple new investments in supporting our Native American students and families. These are the University of Arizona's College of Education's Native SOAR program, which provides mentoring services and supports their Native students in the community through the P20 system, as well as the Akimel Atham Peepash Charter School receiving a grant to help them provide high quality books and establish home libraries for all their enrolled preschool and kindergarten students. We did have a number of local education agencies, as well as at the county level, apply for grant funding. And just to highlight one of these here, I was pleased to see that funding was going towards the Cottonwood Oak Creek School District that is implementing a parent-teacher teams program, which is to strengthen the partnership between the school community and the families. It's a family engagement model that's evidence-based. So it's really exciting to see at the LEA level taking on new initiatives that we can track to see what the impact is, and then hopefully be able to advocate for additional sustainable funding in the future. Next slide. In the area of STEM, we announced a couple new partnerships, new investments. So this is with the ASU Center for Science and Imagination, the Arizona Science Teachers Association, SciTech, and many others. These are just, again, to build upon what schools are able to deliver on their own to provide students with high quality STEM learning opportunities. In the area of civic and career learning in schools, we had the Center for the Future of Arizona was awarded for 2 of their proposals. So these will be strengthening civics engagement at the school level. Next, a few investments supporting career development, specifically junior achievement, jobs for Arizona's graduates, and ABEC, the Arizona Business and Education Coalition. All of these are supporting our students in their career development. And then the last one I'm sharing today, and we have been continuing to make these announcements on a rolling basis, but the last one I wanted to highlight today was a West Ed investment. This was actually $10 million investment because they are specifically working to support our English learner students. So this is for a quality teaching for English learner program, which will support our teachers in providing them the most highly effective teaching methods for our students who are acquiring English. And so, as I said, we are continuing to make these announcements. And if you're, we put out press releases, we post it on social media, it's posted to our website, that's posted here. And so please follow along if you'd like to see where our other investments are going, and we'll continue to bring those announcements back here to the board as well. Very excited to today both spotlight our recent U.S. Presidential Scholar winners, and then after we present these awards, we will then hear from a couple of our student advisors. So I want to first go into the next slide. I want to first say congratulations to all of our U.S. Presidential Scholars. We have invited them here to celebrate with us today. And so I'm just going to go through the names first, and then we'll present some certificates. So today we're very excited to present Isaac Khan, who's a student at Desert Vista High School. Isaac also served on our Student Advisory Council, so we're grateful to see his leadership in both capacities. I also want to recognize Salil Naik from Mountain Ridge High School, and Caitlin Sarah Kai from Basis Scottsdale. So we'll go ahead and present these awards, and I think this is where you'll join me, I think.
Happy to, yeah.
We can do pictures as well. First, Isaac. Congratulations. Good to see you again. We're in a picture.
Nicely done, eh?
Oh, you're welcome to come up.
One big sip.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
There we go.
Smile. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next, Caitlin. Right here. Oh, perfect.
Hi, Mom.
And then I also want to make sure we recognize the other recipients who are not here with us today. So Lydia Marie Pastor and Ava Francesca Casier.
Those certificates are nice, but the medals, boy, that's where it's at, the medal. I like that. Very nice.
And next up, we have 3 student advisors that will be providing us with some public comments today. And I want to point out that, so I do have my student advisory council, but then I do have a number of other advisory councils that also have student members on each of our councils. And so these 3 students are student advisors on our other councils. So first we'll have Blaine Martinez, who serves on our Equitable and Inclusive Practices Advisory Council.
We do not have Blaine Martinez on the meeting.
Okay, we'll check with him.
He's trying to call.
Okay, we'll keep an eye out for him on the Zoom. Let's go next to Dianna Yazi.
And Dianna Yazi has not joined the meeting yet either.
Oh, okay, we'll go next to Amalia Nevarez, who serves on our Indian Education Advisory Council.
My name is Amalia Diaz. I serve on the Latinx Advisory Council, and I believe that one of the most important issues facing Arizona students today is the stigma around mental health and the places for support that students are provided to deal with mental health issues. Due to the negative connotations that society has put around mental health, many students are afraid to reach out for help, which doesn't allow for their emotional well-being to improve. They're afraid of what their peers might think if they speak out, as well as the pressure to fit in both middle and high school is a constant worry of most students. Anything that could make them stand out in an unwanted way is typically avoided at all costs, and admitting a mental health issue could, in their mind, make them a target for unwanted attention. The stigma that having a mental health disorder, such as depression, anxiety, PTSD, or anything of the sort, is what prevents students from having the conversations that need to be had around emotional health. In addition, I see a lot of the negative thoughts that my peers are having more recently come from the pressure for success. And this rings true from what I've seen with students throughout the country, not just in Arizona. The idea of having to decide so much about our futures at a young age can be incredibly daunting and provide additional anxiety sometimes. These pressures can be increased in high achieving environments, such as being around perfectionist adults or in a very competitive school. Providing a safe environment at school to talk about and accept those struggling with mental health can encourage students to seek the help that they need and become successful academically and socially, as well as become more connected to their community. Having open student-led organizations on campus about mental health can help to promote an inclusive environment by those whose acceptance students seek most. Thank you for your time, and I turn it back to Superintendent Hoffman.
Thank you, Amalia.
Thank you.
Jessica, do we have any other students?
Blaine and Dianna have not yet joined the meeting.
Perhaps we'll move on to the executive director's report, and we can certainly circle back if they join us.
That would be wonderful.
That'll work,
Thank you.
okay?
Yep,
Great, thank you. Executive Director, Director Williams, do you have any report for us?
Thank you, Vice President Corr, Superintendent Hoffman, members of the board. My update today is pertaining to the board's retreat that is scheduled for Friday and Saturday, August 26th and 27th. Board staff continues to finalize the location as we've had some hurdles based upon inflation and the rising costs of everything, and frankly the government levels of what we can't exceed. So we're working on finalizing a location which we will provide both to members and to the public, where the board will be holding its retreat. If the retreat is outside of Phoenix Metro, the meeting will start Friday the 26th around 9 a.m. In which we will have our regular August state board meeting. Will be light on policy and agenda items for that regular meeting, but there are some things we need to approve, such as the board's budget request for fiscal year 24. The first session, as we move into the retreat, will focus on boardsmanship, as we have a number of new members, and so we want to ensure that we're establishing our collective commitments as a board and how we operate as a board. The afternoon session, members will have discussions on the state big picture of education. We'll bring in some partner organizations who also do work in areas that board policy touches, so they can talk about their work in their organizations. On Saturday, we'll continue the Friday conversation and develop the board's legislative priorities for next session. Board members will see that we start these conversations at the retreat, and as we go into the fall, we further develop these legislative priorities and then ultimately vote on something in December. Some topics that staff is currently working on to wrap throughout both days of our retreat discussion are the ed program providers, so the EPPs, as we all see them on our agenda every month, looking at retention and outcomes of those EPP programs and figuring out if there's data associated with those EPP programs, both in state, out of state, and across the different types of EPP programs. If there's anything that the board wants to work in that realm. We're also going to be talking about special education policy, early literacy, and linking throughout the discussion, accountability and assessment, CTE, college and career readiness, and COVID impact follow-up reports, to include special education and school leadership. So it's going to be a very robust retreat, and I look forward to the discussion that the board has.
Thank you, Alicia.
No update.
No, okay, thank you.
President Superintendent Hoffman, what we can do is we can work with Sophia and your staff to get them like a written comment, and we can provide that to board members.
That's perfect. Thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you. I will move us on to agenda item 2, which is the call to the public. This is a time for the public to comment on items not on today's agenda or on the consent agenda portion. My understanding is we have a number of speakers, 14 or more. So I would ask that we limit our those wishing to speak to us to 2 minutes. And Director Williams, do we have our first person teed up, ready to go?
President, of course, Superintendent Hoffman, members of the board, prior to calling speakers, I did want to note for the record that we did have a rural schools comment and video link submitted, as well as 10 written ESA and hearing comments. Those are publicly available on Assembly. First up, we have Russell Warren Kukla, followed by Matthew Simon. Russell doesn't look like he's here. So Matthew Simon, followed by Dianna Diaz Harrison.
President Kaur, Superintendent Hoffman, members of the board, Matthew Simon on behalf of Great Leader Strong Schools in support of the approval of the classroom-based preparation programs for Arizona Autism Charter School and Gilbert Unified School District. In 2017, Arizona took bold action to empower local school leaders and give individuals in the state more opportunity to enter the K-12 education workforce and earn a credential. Since then, over 3,000 subject matter expert certificates have been issued, and 7 school districts have established local grow your own classroom-based programs. With your approval today, that number will jump to 9, including the first ever public charter school in Arizona establishing one of these programs. When Arizona first embarked on this path to broaden teacher talent pipelines, opponents decried it as a lowering of expectations and a way to fill classrooms with quote unquote warm bodies. As in the past, before the passage of these policies in 2017, and even today, we have opponents of innovative pathways who claim we have enough pathways, we don't need more. However, what we have seen is a growing movement of school districts and now charter schools who are embarking on this path to identify and cultivate great talent on their own and take control of their workforce needs. Our sister organization, Aid for Arizona, recently released a policy report on K-12 talent pipelines. In that report, it highlights a stark reality. From 2008 to 2020, there has been a 34% decline in traditional preparation program enrollment at universities and colleges. Although the shocking data, policies like this challenge the status quo, that there is not one way to become an excellent teacher. I'm proof of it myself, and we see it on countless occasions, and we're seeing that happen in more and more schools across Arizona. I also wanted to specifically call out the conversation that the board had last week regarding a counselor certificate issue, which I know that you're going to continue to talk about today. I welcome more of these conversations at the board. And I would encourage you to think outside of the box and not relying on one pipeline to educate our K-12 workforce and train and cultivate them. Let's think boldly, let's think innovatively, and I encourage the board to use its statutory confine to continue to find innovative pathways and not just rely on the legislature giving you a mandate to find these. Use the authority you have to continue to broaden pathways. With that, I urge the board to adopt items 3J and 3K and find opportunities so that anyone who wants to serve Arizona students at a high level has a pathway to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Next up, we have Dianna Diaz Harrison, followed by Rebecca Cross.
President Corr, Superintendent Hoffman, members of the board, I'm Dianna Diaz Harrison, founder and executive director at Arizona Autism Charter School, our state's first and only autism-focused charter. We call our school AZACS for short, and we are so excited to embark on the AZACS Teacher Certification Academy. We are doing this to address the teacher pipeline issues proactively, and we are doing this by offering an exceptional teacher training program for people who already have a demonstrated track record with our kids. The professionals that we are targeting for this program are paraprofessionals and instructional leads that have already demonstrated results and a passion for our student population. We have before you a proposal that will allow us to put these teacher candidates through a robust scope and sequence of specialized educator instruction, and best of all, with classroom-based coaching in real time. We have a PhD level professor that is already writing the curriculum for this and already has a track record with getting results for our students through our teachers and teams. So we are excited to just formalize this program and allow teachers to go through the scope and sequence so that at the end they are certified, and that can be life-changing for them as well as for our school and our students. And with a true certification, they can also take that out in the community. We are a very data-driven school, and we have met and exceeded our school-specific academic goals adopted by the State Board for Charter Schools every year, including 2019 and 2020. We did not stop. So this Teacher Academy will be no exception. We demand nothing short of results for our educators and for our students because we know our community needs us and we have skin in the game. Our board members and I as a founder am an autism mom, and we are just addressing this in a very solution-oriented, exceptional way to provide not the minimum for our students, but awesomeness for our students. And that's what we can do with our AZACS Teacher Academy. Thank you for considering this program for our school.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Rebecca Cross, followed by Kelly Pacino.
Hi.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Rebecca Cross, and I have 4 children on ESA. I read through the comments that were submitted today, as well as the survey comments embedded into the ESA report, and I hope that you'll really hear what we are saying. I would like to clarify. When we talk about ESA, there's ESA the program. My kids are thriving. They are succeeding. They have so many opportunities. Ketcher and Alicia listened to us so much 2 years ago, and it meant so much to get those rules in place. Then there's ESA administration, and it seems like everything they're doing is just cutting down. They're eliminating the rules. They're not listening. So I'm talking about ESA today. I'm focusing on administration. A continual theme this year has been issues with ESA administration and their lack of meaningful communication. The main survey parents get is the help desk survey. With the help desk ticket is marked as resolved, we're generally sent a survey. It asks us about our experience, but it does not ask us about ESA administration or communication. If we mark we're dissatisfied, it seems to be tied to that ticket, and we don't want to do that to the workers that are really trying to help us. If we don't put in a help desk ticket, we don't get a survey. However, those satisfied answers are being used to say parents are satisfied with everything, and we are not. The statistics are used very carefully to make it seem like the majority of parents are satisfied. One of the letters that was sent in for the meeting today breaks down the percentages to be more accurate. It's only a very small number of parents who are even represented in those statistics. The comments on those surveys are telling. It's the one place we have to give feedback. So they really aren't even related that much to the survey, but it's our only place to be heard. I'm a highly involved parent. I'm in multiple ESA Facebook groups. I've only missed 1 or 2 SBA meetings in the last 2 years. I speak with other parents. I listen in on the ESA calls. And yet there's information I still can't find. There's policy changes I don't know about. It has a financial impact for my family, and I can only imagine for other families. Information is not given out in writing to all parents. I asked specifically, when will this be given out? And they said, oh, Terry's gonna send out an email. They called me and said, yes, we allow this, but we're going to tell you no more. It was never sent out. I asked at another meeting when they put in another policy change. I said, when are you gonna send this out to all parents in writing? Terry said, thanks for your feedback. I was like, that's not feedback, that's a question. The Q&A was turned off, so we could only submit answers privately. And she's like, okay, all the questions have been answered. And I'm like, mine weren't. Like, I submitted questions, but nobody else can see each other, so we don't know what's actually being asked. This year under the current administration has been the worst I've seen. No meaningful communication, approvals rescinded without notice, asking us to edit the handbook after it went into effect for mistakes they refused to change before it's approved. Last ESA call, they said, pull out your pencils. We're changing the handbook with some mistakes. And I'm like, what? And I said, well, we're only human. I said, but we sent all those records. We came down here. These are the things we talked to you about.
Rebecca, your thoughts are really important on that, that you just
We've estimated the Parents Action Committee and the copy and paste newsletters are sent out on Fridays. Our kids deserve better than this. So thank you.
thank you.
Next up, we have Kelly Pacino, followed by Rebecca Stewart.
I try to write in pitch Tino, but it's like, no, it really isn't. Hi, everybody.
Welcome.
My name is Kelly Pacino. I had something prepared, but I thought I would just talk to you as if we're at a coffee table right now. I think that would be better. I first wanted to always say thank you all, including Ms. Hoffman, for your dedication to all students in Arizona, not just the ESA program. I know that I feel like at times that it sounds like we are speaking at you. It's hard because we're almost forced into that quick little minute that it comes just like blah, and you're like, what do we do? Our hands are tied with all of it, but we hear you, and you've all have acknowledged that you hear our concerns, and you all have done something in each of your own ways to support our program, our students. My son is going to be 10. This year, it's exciting for us because he was in the red on our, like, I guess it's, I don't know if everybody does it, STARS testing where they do the average testing. So we're in the red at the beginning of the year. We are up in the green and we're on track. And I do owe that and credit that to the opportunities that he has. He has a full customized education because of this, all supports, hands on deck. I just, again, want to say thank you. But what you can do when you go to your retreat or when you break for the summer is take some time. I ask each and every one of you, read those comments, take 20 minutes once a week, go back for the year. You all know, a palette, Costco size palette of feedback. It's got to, something's got to click, something's got to click. I hope into next year that you won't have to see me and I won't have to see you each month, but I will, since you couldn't speak, since he was nonverbal and we all sat around at this IE, everybody shrugged, what's this kid can do? I don't know if he's ever gonna talk, I don't know if he's gonna read, write, he can do those things. I've always advocated for my son. In fact, personally, it took him 10 years to be a piece of this book. So imagine that mother drive just to get him here, and now he's here, and he is facing a lot. But with the right programs and the right people taking time to continue to care, the program can continue to be a success for all students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Rebecca Stewart, followed by Sarah Blank. Is Rebecca on, Jessica?
Yes, she is. Executive Director Williams.
Hi there. Can you guys hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Perfect. Good afternoon or morning. My name's Rebecca and I am an ESA mother. Our family is new to the program and this upcoming year will be our second year in it. I would like to state how it has helped my daughter thus far. My daughter Eslyn has lost quite a bit of her hearing and we enrolled her into the program because her home district was not equipped to meet her specific needs. We are able to pay for a highly qualified speech therapist that specializes in hearing loss which our insurance does not cover and our family could not afford without the program. We are able to pay for a private preschool a couple days a week that keeps a low class ratio, through which my daughter has grown leaps and bounds since joining. We still educate us at home as well, and with the funds, we have been able to buy curriculums that are more visual and hands-on that help my daughter academically. I will be forever grateful that our family has access to a wonderful program such as ESA that is allowing us to utilize the education funds she is entitled to that will benefit her long-term. Recently, though, I have had my first negative encounter with the program. The company, Class Wallet, that is contracted to oversee the funds and act as a bank for my daughter, was refusing to issue a refund charge in full. I purchased multiple educational items through Amazon, after which one seller was unable to fulfill an item and canceled and refunded my daughter's money. Class Wallet did not add that money back to my daughter's account automatically, so I reached out to them and sent them a copy of the email from the seller showing they canceled the order in the exact amount of the return. After a week of sending follow-up emails because they never responded to my request, Class Wallet partially returned some of the money but withheld a portion of it. After a few weeks of going back and forth with Class Wallet with no resolution, I had no idea what recourse I could take and who I could turn to with this problem. Typically, when we have questions or need items pre-approved, we create what is called a help desk ticket. I created a ticket on May 19th with my concern and showed the back and forth emails between Class Wallet and myself and how they are refusing to refund the rest of my daughter's money. I'm almost done. I know my time is up, I promise.
Please continue. Go ahead.
I asked my request to be sent to the supervisors. Here's the quoted response I got from Tanya when I reached out to help desk. Regretfully, once an order has been approved by ESA, refunds and such are out of our hands. I would encourage you to continue to reach out to Class Wallet for the refund. If you would like to file a complaint, I will be attaching the link below. Please, if you have any questions, I am happy to help. I had already been going back and forth with Class Wallet with no resolution though, and I felt the response that I was given by ESA. They didn't take my concerns seriously about Class Wallet withholding my daughter's funds. Since then, I have emailed, I don't know if some of you got my email, a bunch of people. The issue has been resolved. Since then, I don't know if Class Wallet got audited, but there was a mass amount of refund that was given to parents in a single day. One refund was from 2020. So my situation is not unique. I was told by one of the representatives that I emailed that SBE would be trying to establish a better contact so parents can bring concerns like mine directly to the treasurer's office since they oversee the contract with Class Wallet.
Rebecca, please wrap up, please.
Sure. So I'm just here to first ask if you're aware that this is happening. Second, if you are, has SBE come up with an idea on how parents can bring our concerns directly to the appropriate party? And finally, what is the timeline you have given those in charge of this project to accomplish this task? Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Next up, we have Sarah Blank, followed by Sandra Kirkby. Sarah?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. President Core and members of the board, I thank you for your time today. I appreciate each of you and your service to all students, no matter their educational choice. During the 429 SBE meeting, the board agreed that discussions were still open regarding the revised handbook and that the AG would further weigh in and consult. Just asking for a timeline or when families can expect an update. I'm also here again to discuss issues with ADE's administration of the ESA program. To me, the program and administration are separate. Parents are so grateful for the program and all it provides. However, we continue to be frustrated and baffled by the inconsistencies, lack of communication, and administrative accountability. Parents are program experts. We know and understand what our children need. Our feedback should be an integral part of how the ESA program is run. Yet parents have no true mechanism for feedback. We have no opportunity for collaboration or engagement. We simply want to educate our children. We need the program to work in order to do so. Shifting gears, my most urgent concern is the third-party banking system Class Wallet. Their contract expires at the end of this month, and it has no service level agreements. Class Wallet's management does not work for the ESA program or families. I ask that ADE and the state treasurer open the RFP to bids and include service level agreements within the contract. Another option is to simply return to the Bank of America system. Parents have experienced a multitude of issues with Class Wallet. The two most recent occurred within the last few weeks. Yesterday, parents alerted ADE and Class Wallet that debit cards were not working. Nothing could be purchased. This blocks and delays our children's education. The card needs to work. In May, vendor payments and reimbursements were severely delayed. Vendors were contacting Class Wallet and also families asking about their payments. These delays put families in financial jeopardy. They also block or completely halt our children's education. Vendors may charge late fees, which are not an allowable ESA expense, so parents are left to pay for something outside of their control. Vendors can also drop our students when payments are missing and late. This is unacceptable. The financial management of the ESA program needs to work for all families. Please do not rubber stamp Class Wallet's contract renewal. I ask that you open the RFP to bids and at least include service level agreements. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sarah.
Next up, we have Sandra Kirkby, followed by Tamara Miller. Sandra?
Can you hear me?
Again.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Sandra Kirkby, and I'm a single mother to an autistic child that is an ESA recipient. I feel the need to bring to the board's attention the continued lack of communication from ESA and the extensive problems with Class Wallet. Class Wallet places so many MCC code restrictions on the debit card, it makes using it to pay for tutors and paraprofessionals nearly impossible. I'm forced into a situation to pay for these services and need timely reimbursement. Class Wallet has a contractual obligation to reimburse expenses within 10 days, and that did not happen this past month. On May 16th, I submitted $3,000 in reimbursements for tutor and paraprofessional services, and on the next day, ESA approved the expenses, and on May 31st, I still had not received the funds, $3,000, and knowing that, rents are due the following day. I tried calling Class Wallet. I waited on hold for 30 minutes and had to hang up after 30 minutes. I emailed the help desk at 9:30, and then I ended up sending emails to Terry O'Brien, Kathy Hoffman, ESA Feedback, and Senator Messnard. On January 2nd, I received from Class Wallet an email stating that and it was a generic email that many other parents got. I'm sorry that this is taking so long. Unfortunately, the Federal Reserve faced a national outage on May 19th that affected ACH and wires. The issue has since been resolved. Any transactions in process during that time have since resumed. The banking partner has not received any communication regarding settlement times from the Federal Reserve. However, we are closely monitoring the affected transactions. Please keep checking your account. On June 2nd, I got that. I replied, I'm a single mother and need to be reimbursed to pay my bills. I need resolution to this. Class Wallet profited $29 million last year. And I believe it's Class Wallet's responsibility to use their profits to reimburse me. And that may give them more motivation to resolve this issue. I received reimbursement the following day, finally. But there's so many issues here. First of all, the debit card it cannot be used.
Sandra, I would ask that you summarize your remark to finish up.
Okay, it can't be used. And then, to be owed $3,000 for so long is absolutely unacceptable. It's in violation of their agreement. This Federal Reserve issue, there was no communication from Class Wallet or ESA. We never got any communication that there was an issue. And it sounds like an excuse that needs to be investigated. Is their system safe? Are people hacking into their system and stealing the state's money? I mean, what
Thank you,
happened?
Sandra.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next up, we have Tamara Kumpfeler, followed by Carol Bristol. Tamara?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can, go ahead.
Okay. I apologize. I'm at my children's vacation Bible school trying to just find a quiet hole to speak to you from.
Well, good luck with that.
I know. I literally just ducked into a bathroom to talk to you. So, not that you needed to know that, but there you go. I am an ESA parent to now 3 children. And that is one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about today, is that my 3rd child is one of the ones that is stuck in the current contract issue that we've been told is an IT issue. We can't have 2 applications available at the same time, et cetera, et cetera. So my child applied 2 days after the application was closed for this school year, even though the contract or the statute says that the contract will remain open for the full year and that funding will happen within the quarter that the application is approved. So I have his application approved and I'm currently unable to educate him because I don't have his funding. And according to the rules, which I am a very big follower of, I have to spend some of his money this school year in order for me to remain in compliance. I don't have a way to do that. I don't have funding for him. And I'm being told that on July 1st, I will get an addendum that will give me the Q4 funding along with Q1 of next school year. So I will be out of compliance with his account because I won't have funding before July 1st for him. And his educational options are on hold because our family is a low-income family who lives in an extremely rural area of central Arizona. And I can't go out of pocket with our mortgage money in order to spend for his education and hope that I'm going to get reimbursed eventually. This is a problem. And the fact that ESA and the Department of Education is blaming a technology issue when the contract is supposed to be open year round, funding is supposed to happen year round. So why? Why is this an issue? Why is this even a thing? It should just be that we applied, we were approved. I can sign the contract now and get funded, or hold off and sign in Q1, which is within 30 days. So anyway, somebody needs to figure it out and help our kids. Thank you again for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tamara.
Next up, we have Dr. Carol Bristol, followed by Christine Emmanuel. Dr. Bristol?
Hi all, Superintendent Hoffman, President Corr, State Board members, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Carol Basile. I'm the Dean of the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College. I was asked today to speak about our partnerships with ADE, so I'm asking for nothing, just wanting to give some good news about what's happening here. The Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College at ASU has over 7,700 students, one of the most diverse colleges of education across the country, having almost 40% students of color and serving school systems across the globe. In our new initiative that we call the Next Education Workforce, we see the issues we face today with teachers not as a problem of teacher shortage, but as a workforce design problem. And to address that challenge, we're working with ADE and a growing number of school systems in Arizona to fundamentally change the working condition and learning environment by building teams of educators with distributed expertise and providing more flexible pathways to entering the profession, specializing and advancing. Good for students and good for teachers. To this end, we have been thrilled to partner with ADE first around the Arizona Community Educator Initiative, designed to increase the number of coordination and impact of community educators working with Arizona learners. The Arizona STEM Acceleration Project, which is reimagining Arizona's STEM ecosystem and preparing teachers to deliver high-quality STEM activities. We are bringing new and more flexible multimodal pathways to Indigenous communities and rural communities across the state in order to prepare more teachers. We're supporting children's health and well-being, contributing to capacity for learning and academic success. And we have a robust data sharing agreement with ADE, which has been fantastic on so many fronts, and working with them on a Department of Ed grant, a TSL grant, that's helping us actually look at HR systems, working with Mesa Public Schools, including teacher evaluation systems, advancement pathways, and teacher preparation. Across ASU, we partner with ADE, a couple of opportunities, Arizona, PBS, which you saw earlier. We'll be working with school communities to provide successful transition to 5-year-olds to kindergarten. And our Office of Education Outreach and Student Services is developing new ways to support academic success for first-generation and low-income students. This partnership with ADE is essential as we move forward, creating new learning environments for all Arizona students and new working environments for teachers. We appreciate the partnership greatly and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Basile. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Next up, we have Christine Emmanuel, followed by Wes Brownfield.
Hello, President Corr and members of the board. My name is Christine and I am an ESA account holder. As of today, it has been over 40 days since requesting just 4 sensory items for my student with autism. There are over 40 emails sent or received by ADE in regards to these 4 sensory items. To get these items approved before purchasing them, I have sent in highlighted portions of my student's IEP that specifically states that my student presents with significant sensory needs, which impacts their participation in school-based tasks. It is my job to make sure that my student receives an education that meets their individual educational needs using the sensory items that will work for them. But I struggle to understand why ADE is refusing to allow purchases of sensory items for my autistic students' educational needs. Why is ADE asking me to jump through hoops to produce unnecessary documentation to prove that sensory items are needed, even when it clearly states a significant sensory need in their IEP? Parents, especially parents of special needs students such as myself, do not have the time to appeal unnecessary decisions made by the department. We are tired of fighting to get what our students need. I don't want to be here before the board month after month begging to be heard. I don't want to spend over 40 days or have to write or read over 40 emails just to find out that ADE refuses to allow purchases of sensory items unless I produce the unnecessary documentation to prove sensory needs that my student's IEP already addresses. Things need to change for the better for our ESA students. Our kids depend on the current administration to properly administer the program. 40 emails and 40 days later, plus a full-on denial for sensory items for an autistic student is such a waste of time and a waste of ADE's administration funds. In this case, the department took 10 times the amount of actions than it should take just for one approval. I implore the department to properly administer the ESA program so that ESA students are served well. And as always, I thank you for your service as board members. You're very much appreciated. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Christine.
Next up, we have Wes Brownfield, followed by Ramona Millot. Wes.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. My name is Wes Brownfield. I am the Executive Director of the Arizona Rural Schools Association, and I'm also on the board of the Final Mile Project. I believe you all got this short video. I'm the guy with the accent, and what you don't know is it took them nearly 2 hours of taping me to get that part in. It takes a lot to get your subject verb agreement straight. A little more than 2 years ago, it became clear to State E-Rate Director Mylon Eaton and I that a couple of things were coming. Schools are going to go into lockdown, and while they have been working towards video platforms for blended learning classrooms, they weren't ready. Also, the kids who were the least ready were our rural kids, out where internet is either too expensive, not available, or very poor quality. And hotspots only help the cell phone, cell coverage worked. So I asked Mylon what we could do. Do you have a plan? Of course, if you know Mylon Eaton had a plan. It was a plan to bring quality Wi-Fi services to rural communities based on the E-rate broadband internet that Mylan helped bring into those schools. So thanks to E-rate, thanks to the Department of Education, a good many, in fact, I think even majority of our rural schools have high quality broadband into the school. Mylan's plan, we will put a tower on each school. We'll backhaul, that's my technical term. I learned backhaul into the broadband. We will Wi-Fi that signal out to parents or to the homes of selected students. Pardon me as I stumbled through this. So we had a plan which was proven technology. We knew it would work. We had a consortium. We even had a logo. The only thing we didn't have any money. So we began to ask, and lo and behold, I got a phone call from Superintendent Hoffman one day and said, "Could you use $1.5 million?" She never saw my happy days. So thanks to the confidence that Superintendent Hoffman showed this concept, because the final mile is not a thing, just a concept that works. We lit up 9 rural communities. We lit up nearly 400 homes for these students. The beauty of it is they get throttled educational content for part of the day, and this is where the magic happens. At some point, we open that up to commodity internet. At that point, we build in return on investment for the internet service providers who took a chance on us. A lot of people have trusted us. A lot of people have taken a chance on us. We didn't light up the whole state, but we're still hoping to. We focus on the granular. We knew there would be big projects. There had to be. You have to have the highway before you have the driveway. But our job is to put those driveways in for these students all across Arizona. I've gone over my time. I know Mark's back there with the stopwatch on, so he's going to tell me how long I went over. I just want to thank Superintendent Hoffman for what you've done for our project.
Thank you, Wes. Appreciate it.
Except we have Ramona Malott. I think it's doctor too.
It is doctor.
Doctor.
Hello, I'm Ramona Malott. I don't know if there's a video or not, but Superintendent Hoffman, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity to speak before you. As noted, I'm Ramona Malott, and I serve as the Dean for the College of Education at NAU. I too am here not to ask for anything, but really to express my appreciation for the support we've received from ADE, for the partnership we've forged to the funding we have received. We are very pleased to partner with ADE regarding a particular program, the Professional Development Program with the Institute for Native Serving Educators at NAU and the Arizona Teacher Residency Program. And I'm going to speak briefly on both those programs. Through this support that we've received, we've been able to grow the number of culturally responsive long-term professional development programs to educators in schools serving Indigenous students. INE, as we refer to it, is a collaborative initiative focused on growing the capacity of pre-K-12 teachers, school counselors, and other educators who work directly with Native students. We previously had a single professional development program, and with the new support we've received, we now have 5 distinct professional development programs serving all of these different school professionals. These programs are grounded in culturally responsive principles. They are long-term, so they're not just short-term programs to ensure that we have a lasting impact with these educators. All of these programs intentionally cultivate collaborative relationships among pre-K-12 educators. The second program, I don't know if I'm running out of time. That was really quick.
Please continue, Dr. Malott, please.
Oh, okay. Every educator in our professional development program now writes these culturally responsive units, which are now available on our website that others can use. So it's really, builds on this professional development. Just briefly on the Arizona Teacher Residency Program, we've just admitted our first cohort of 25 to 30 pre-service teachers. They're going to be on campus at NAU in July for their initial kickoff and the first classes. We've hired our new faculty member who's going to be running the program, and of course our director. So really, really excited to prepare these high quality teachers who can sustain themselves in the classroom through a year-long apprenticeship. As you know, the Arizona Teacher Residency Program is built on the medical model, and with the support that we received through the Arizona Department of Education out of the ESSER funding, we have been able to kind of launch the first of its kind in Arizona. So very, very excited about that. We are working with 3 school districts, Osborne, Roosevelt, and Tempe. And the students are going to be spending a lot of time there. And then they're going to commit to working for 3 years after their residency year. So again, really, this program is very, very geared to addressing teacher shortages in Arizona. And the research on these programs show that, we are able to recruit more teachers of color into the profession, greater retention, and they're going to be here for a longer time. So I'd like to end my remarks with a sincere thanks for the support we've received to establish these partnerships with our schools and support children and teachers. Ultimately, I think our children in Arizona are going to benefit from this support. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Please know how much we appreciate your efforts also. Thank you.
President, core members of the board, that concludes the
Fantastic. Thank you. So I will move us on to item 3, consent agenda. Consent agenda can be taken in a single motion. I understand that Member Clark would like to pull item 3M. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Are there any other members who wish to pull any other items on the consent agenda? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead. Please.
Like only because I want to ask a question, want to pull, 3C.
3C. Okay. Thank you. Any other? Okay. Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve items? Let me see if I can get this right. 3A and B, items 3D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, N, O, and P. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for bailing me out. Yes. Alphabet can be tricky. Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion or comments? Okay. Julia, if I could remind you, Member Meyerson, to thank you. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor of approving the consent agenda item minus 3C and 3M, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Then I will move us back to 3M, the items in which the order in which we pull these items, and turn it over to Member Clark for her comments.
So I just had a few questions about, and let me pull it out here, the Q3 Empowerment Scholarship account report. Do we have Director O'Brien on to answer questions about the report? Does anyone know? That's what happened last time, so I just wasn't sure.
She has a link. I can send her a message to join us.
Okay.
So she does know to be on standby.
Oh, okay, perfect.
I will send her a message right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
President Core, we do have Mike Manley is here for item 3C to be available to answer questions.
So maybe I'll take that item first, Member Clark. Is that okay?
That's perfect.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Okay.
Best laid plans. Thank you, Catcher. Please, Member Clark, continue.
Thank you. Thank you, Director O'Brien, for jumping on and joining us. I just had a few questions for you related to the Empowerment Scholarship Q3 report that I wanted to get clarification on and bring to the attention to the other members of the board. First, I want to thank you for incorporating certain feedback items that I'd requested at our last board meeting, specifically kind of breaking out some of the denial reason categories so that we could get a better picture of what's happening with some of these families and why they're being denied. So, and also just the numbering and bringing it in line with the rule is very, very helpful. So thank you for that. The first question that I had was on page 8 of the report. Looking to it here for myself, under section E1, which relates to parent feedback. I know as board members, we heard some comments today. We also received a lot of written comments related to this particular issue. So just had a few clarifying questions related to underneath the electronic surveys portion. So there's a comment here under electronic surveys that says that the survey data shows that over 70% of families are satisfied with the ESA program. And I was wondering if you could help us understand where that 70% comes from.
Yeah, it comes from one of the survey questions, and Member Clark, thank you for that. We have talked internally, and it should have said 70% of the respondents. So I think the choice of words on that one in the future will be clarified.
Absolutely, thank you. And that's something obviously that I think caught my attention and probably the attention of a lot of other folks. The only other question I had related to that is I did click on both of the links that we were provided, which were the Q3 help desk survey results, which when opened is actually called the ESA customer satisfaction survey. And then also I clicked on the Q3 website survey results, which is called the ESA program satisfaction survey. Yeah, okay, you have that listed there. And the only number that I saw on there, because on the website survey, there is a broader question of how satisfied are you with the quote ESA program as a whole on the website survey. And it said, I think, this printout's a little bit difficult. I think you had 145 responses. And that's why I was asking about that 70%, because I was adding up the satisfied and very satisfied category on there for how satisfied are you with the ESA program as a whole. And it was only 29% out of those 140 responses. So appreciate your clarification. And I'm wondering too, if on the Q4 report, it would be beneficial to have these charts and graphs kind of included in the report so that we can kind of look at them and kind of see those responses for ourselves as well. So thank you for answering that question. My next question is on page 11. Look there myself. Under F4. So we have a rule that specifies, what needs to be included in the quarterly report, which guides all of this. And under this section, the rule says, quote, concerns from parents submitted to the department, the treasurer, and the private financial management firm, and how the department, treasurer, and financial management firm are addressing the concern. So what I read under F4 is that the department received a single email and how the department responded to that issue. So am I correct in understanding that between January to March of 2022, the department only received one email from a parent expressing an issue or concern with Class Wallet, according to the report?
Is something that was actionable, correct? Yes, you are correct.
As something that was actionable.
Right. Yeah, so lately, obviously, there have been some other concerns that will show up in next next quarterly report. But overall, I mean, yeah, that was the only one that we had recorded that we actually had to take action on. There have been some other concerns about timeliness, new staff training on their staff for the service desk. But those to us were just typical things that the organization was dealing with on an ongoing basis. But to us, this was something that a parent and several parents obviously were concerned about because it was unclear. So we asked Class Wallet to resolve this. And actually, we got an update yesterday. Thanks to this parent, these changes will be made in the next few weeks.
Thank you for that. So according to the rule, it doesn't specify that only actionable items are supposed to be included in this report. It just says, quote, concerns from parents submitted to the department, the treasurer, and the private financial management firm. So I think the report in this section might be lacking quite a bit because my guess is through either phone calls, emails. I know I've been copied on many of those emails, as is the state board ESA feedback email address, help desk tickets. There probably was more than one concern that had been submitted.
Member Clark, that's the only one I was aware of. So yeah, I know we have more after like this quarter, we will have several, but last quarter, that is the only one I was actually made aware of.
Okay, so then my next follow-up to that is that the rule also requires information that the treasurer's office has received regarding any concerns or comments about Class Wallet. And I don't see that in this report in that section. Was the department able to reach out to the treasurer's office to find out if they've received any concerns from parents between January and March?
I did not specifically reach out to them this last quarter, but they typically reach out to us or us to them. So for example, the concerns you heard today about the refunds not being full amounts and the Federal Reserve issue, those we are in constant communication with the treasurer's office and Class Wallet. So I did not specifically, but in the future I can, but I can assure you, Member Clark, that they reach out to us if they ever have a concern or they hear of concerns.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm pretty sure this report requires, according to the rule, that information be included in the report. We can maybe follow up on that and kind of figure that out. We might even want to create a way where the treasurer's office, parents can provide feedback to the treasurer's office about what's going on with Class Wallet, because it seems like there might be confusion for parents, like who do we give our feedback to about Class Wallet? The treasurer's office holds the contract, the Department of Education administers, but the rule does require it in the report. And then on that, just one last question related to that.
If I can talk for one moment, I'd like to go into executive session because I would like to get some legal guidance on whether or not this the line of questioning is relevant to whether or not we're accepting the receipt of the quarterly report for this agenda item. I would like legal
executive
advice.
session for what exactly?
For legal advice to the
Okay.
Attorney General on
Okay.
whether or not this line of questioning is relevant to whether or not the board is receiving, we're here to approve whether or not that that the quarterly report has been received by the State Board of Education. So I would like some legal guidance on that topic.
Kim, are you prepared Kim, prepared to do that if we go into executive session?
I can.
Well, we can get into executive session and tell you what, and then you'll tell us what you think. I got that wrong. Okay.
You need to make a motion to an executive session.
Thank you. I think we have a
Mr.
motion.
President? I'm sorry, Mr. President. I had a question on the item. I don't know if I should present it now or wait till we come out of executive session.
I would ask, I don't know either, but I would ask just out of an abundance of caution, Member Kirkby, is hold on to the question.
Okay.
I've got a motion to move to executive session that I need a second for.
Second.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Do we need to do a roll or? Yeah, I think we're gonna
We're
do
gonna do
a
a
roll.
roll.
Yeah, we're gonna do a roll.
Give me one moment so I can document this correctly.
Member Hoffman, member Burton, initial motion and second.
Member Clark, your vote please.
Nay.
Member Clay,
Aye.
member Hagerman,
Aye.
member Haley,
Nay.
member, excuse me, member Kravickas,
Nay.
member Meyerson,
Aye.
member Burton,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Aye.
President Corr.
Aye.
Vote is 6-3, so the board will move into executive session at 11:13.
Are we set up for folks back there to, yeah,
Folks who are virtual,
Yeah.
Melissa will send you a phone number, and we will call into that phone number once we're in executive session.
So should we just hang up on the?
You just make sure, if you're virtual, just make sure your camera's off and you're muted, and then utilize a different device, maybe in a different room or location for each session.
click your cameras on real quick. Let us know you're there. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you. Awesome. All right, fantastic. I'm going to call this back into regular session at 11:41, and appreciate everyone's patience who are with us here in person. And Member Clark, I'm going to turn it back. Do we have? Member Clark, I'm going to turn it back over to you. We've clarified and that there's nothing to preclude you from asking some questions. So if you want to continue to do so, we'll continue to move along.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I promise I'll be brief. I was almost at the end. Is Director O'Brien on also?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the next question that I had was that the rule requires information from the third-party administrator, in this case, Class Wallet, has received regarding any concerns or comments from parents. And I know that Class Wallet has an email, a phone number, and an instant chat. So was the department able to reach out to Class Wallet to gather this information for section F4 of the report?
No, but we can do so.
So based on those questions that I asked, it would seem to me that the quarter three report is missing a few items under F4, specifically concerns from parents that have been submitted to Department Treasurer and private financial management firm. So it appears that it may be incomplete. The last thing that I wanted to bring up was regarding the opportunity that the board has to request any other request information from future reports. So with that, just a little background on my request for that. So as part of the next quarter four report, there was an issue brought up at a previous board meeting regarding deadlines being changed, and we received some written and public comments on this issue where the quarter four application was removed to put up the quarter one application. And then we received some correspondence regarding that the quarter four applications be kept up by the department according to this statute. And so we received that notification. So the solution, as I understand it, is that parents who have applied during this kind of interesting time period in quarter four so that their students can access the empowerment scholarship, they are going to go ahead and sign their contract for the quarter one 22-23 school year. And then on July 1st, at the beginning of the year, they're going to receive an addendum to their contract stating that they were eligible for quarter four funds, and they'll get their quarter four funds and their quarter one funds together in the new school year. So it's very confusing, but my question was then for the quarter four report, I think it would be extremely helpful for us to know, especially since there's the possibility of this issue happening a year from now with the same thing, that out of the number of applications that were submitted and approved in quarter four, how many of those new students are not going to receive their funding in quarter four? They're actually being bumped and only receiving their funds into quarter one. I think that would give us a really good idea of how significant that issue has been.
Member Clark, as I understand it, the language reads, the board may request. So I think that request, we can work with staff to put on a future agenda to see what the will of the entire board is. Does that meet with your satisfaction?
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
Any other questions from anyone? Member Kervikis.
Yes, just a simple request regarding, I think the report shows clearly that students with disabilities are the biggest group that are utilizing ESAs. I think it would be really helpful in future reports to break that out by the 13 disability categories, even especially as we're hearing from parents, like how many kids with autism, the 13 federal categories, which I know AD already has, I think would be helpful. And also, we also have a supplemental chart table right after it that shows by grade. I think it would be helpful to see that as well, because what parents of students with disabilities may be utilizing them for in preschool are very different than what they might need for transition services in high school. So I just think those two pieces of information would be really helpful to not just to us, but to the legislature as well.
I'm sorry, Member Kavurkis. I got the first part that you want it broken down by the disability category. I'm sorry, I'm unclear on your second request.
No problem. I probably didn't say it well. If we could see for students with disability, what grade? So of those 7,000 per year, how many in preschool, how many in first grade, how many in second grade? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So probably same principle applies, Member Kavurkis, and we will craft that into a agenda item to be considered by the whole board and see the will of the board, because we believe that to be the appropriate path. Does that meet with your satisfaction?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions, comments, or Superintendent Hoffman?
Thank you, President, core board members. So while typically I would say that this agenda item is simply to receive, as I have before, just simply whether or not we have as a board received the quarterly report that has been prepared by our ESA team very diligently. As I've always said, there's always room for improvement. There's always, I'm looking forward to thinking about what type of data would be most helpful for board members to be included in the quarterly report. I'm very open to these conversations. I think as the department continues to work with board members and build rapport with each and every one of you, we would love to hear these questions in advance so that we can address these concerns ahead of time, and we can, look at our report and make sure it's meeting the expectations and the rules, and that these conversations could happen ahead of the meeting just to be most productive in our time together as a board and to keep this as a consent agenda. That said, because I hear Member Clark's feedback and also what our Executive Director, Terry O'Brien, has responded with of improvements that could be made upon this quarterly report, I would support not accepting the receipt of the quarterly report in this meeting as we have in the past. But again, I would just encourage board members to really work with our staff in conjunction and support so that we can work together and not make this into a longer discussion at this place.
Thank you, Superintendent Hoffman. Any other comments, questions, or concerns? Hearing none, I would seek a motion for approval of item 3M, receipt of the Empowerment Scholarship ESA 2022 Q3 report. Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Member Burton, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Member Kavurkis, thank you. Any additional conversation? All in favor of approving item 3M, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please indicate by saying nay.
Nay.
The nays, do we need a roll call? Sounded like the nays have it. Should we? Okay.
So I have a motion to approve item 3M. That motion was made by Member Burton. It was seconded by Member Kavurkis.
Correct.
Member Clark, your vote, please.
Nay.
Member Clay, your vote, please.
Nay.
Member Hageman.
Nay.
Member Haley.
Nay.
Superintendent Hoffman.
Nay, and once again, we really want to be collaborative.
Yes.
Member Meyerson.
Nay.
Member Kavurkis.
May I explain my vote?
Please.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and accept the report, and I'm grateful for the superintendent's willingness to continue this conversation and just recognize that the questions and issues around this program have existed for a long time over multiple administrations, and that any questions and issues that at least I continue to bring are just to try to continue to recognize the legislature's desire for the state board to really be the place where parents and constituents come. And so I again welcome the continued conversation. With that, I vote aye.
Member Burton?
Aye, and I too appreciate the superintendent's willingness to collaborate. Guess I'm unclear why receipt of the report should get in the way of that. I think we're going to collaborate regardless, and I thank Member Clark for being very clear about what questions and issues need to go into the next report. So I vote aye.
President Corr?
I vote aye with the thought that I fail to see how voting nay moves us further along. And that is in fact what I seek for us to do: continue the collaboration, continue the communication and the progress, and failing to acknowledge receipt of this report, I don't think moves us forward. So I vote in the minority in affirmatively.
The motion to accept receipt of the report fails with a vote of 3 yeses, 6 noes.
Do we know the ramifications of failing to acknowledge receipts? Does it just come back at an additional?
President Corr, members of the board can just, it's accepting the receipt. You're accepting a report. So if the board chooses not to accept it, then
Okay.
you're just not accepting it.
Okay. Then I will move us. Thank you all. I will move us back to item 3C, which was pulled from the consent agenda by Member Kervikis. Member Kervikis, you had questions or comments?
Thank you. Just a very simple one, and actually similar to the one I just raised, that I'm guessing that since it's a federal program and one that I know schools really appreciate and use, if we could just at a later time get, and I apologize for not raising them earlier, Superintendent, but just get the demographics on which students are benefiting from this program. That's all.
Are you please? Yeah, please. Thank you, Member Kervikis. We may have some answers right here, but please go ahead.
President Corr, Superintendent Hoffman, members of the board. Member Kervikis, I'd be happy to, we do an annual report that goes into the demographics in some depth. I'd be happy to provide that for you. If you look at the 43 LEAs that we have on the agenda to accept Cycle 18 funds currently, we do provide something called priority points for schools that are either identified as rural or town, or if they have 80% or more free and reduced lunch, or if they are in school improvement, either targeted or general. So we do have that information. We'd be happy to share it. If you look at what we're presenting now, approximately 35 of those 43 sites had those priority points. You might be looking for something more specific, and we'd be more than happy to provide that to you.
Thank you. I did see most of that, and I do appreciate the fact that each community uses these programs very uniquely to meet the needs of the community. So that's why I wanted to see the demographics, and not surprisingly, as you guys all know, this will be a common theme for me, if students with disabilities are benefiting from these programs as well.
Absolutely. We'll be happy to share. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions that we have?
Any other comments, questions? No, with that, I would seek a motion for approval of consent item 3C. Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Carla, Member Kervikis, do I have a second?
Second.
Member Burton, any additional conversation? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. All right. That, folks, believe it or not, was the consent agenda. So let's move on to item 4, which is an additional call to the public. This is, of course, the time for the public to comment on items on today's general session. Consistent with the earlier call to the public, all speakers will be limited, please, to 2 minutes. Director Williams, have we received any requests to speak?
Yes, President Corr, we have one speaker today, Mark Jorgensen.
Great. Welcome, Mark.
Good morning. Is it still morning?
It is.
President Corr, Superintendent Hoffman, members of the board. For the record, I'm Dr. Mark Jorgensen, Executive Director of the Arizona School Administrators. On behalf of our 1,400 members, I'm here today to address agenda item 5A, your continuing work on accountability systems. We are pleased to see the plan for extensive stakeholder input in the work on standard setting for the Arizona Science Assessment. Practitioner participation is absolutely critical. Similarly, we are pleased to see practitioner input plan for the ACT panels. A word of caution on the ACT standard setting process and the use of probabilities. These decisions have a huge impact on students who are considering higher education. When you set a score saying, if you are below this, you have little probability of success in a higher education math or English course, you are sending a message of discouragement to the student and the family. You are saying, in effect, don't strive for higher education. So please consider carefully the consequences that attach to standard setting decisions. Finally, I must put in a word for the long-term implications of our accountability system as you continue to make decisions about it. Growth remains an essential component of any rational research-based accountability system. Now, in the transition to ACT at the high school level, we've had to abandon the growth indicator. Many prominent researchers address this issue. For example, Dr. Jay Green of the University of Arkansas in November of 2016 states, if we explored the most common use of test scores, examining the level of proficiency, there are no credible researchers, who believe that this is a reliable indicator of school or program quality. No credible researchers believe that it's a reliable indicator of school or program quality. So please keep that in mind as you move forward or listen to advocates for proficiency as a strong factor. As we establish a track record of ACT scores in the future years, growth needs again to be a consideration in the high school level accountability system. Thanks for your kind attention.
Thank you. No other speakers, Director Williams? Then I will move us on into the general session. 5A is presentation and discussion regarding the standard setting process used to determine performance levels for the ACT and AZ Science statewide assessment. Director Williams?
Thank you, President Corr, Superintendent Hoffman, members. Today we have Audra, who's the Deputy Associate Superintendent of Assessment, will be giving us an overview of the process of standard setting for AZ Sci and ACT, as we just heard from our last speaker. This is very important for the state because the outcome of the standard setting does impact the state's accountability system, which impacts schools, goes into school improvement and any other types of programs in which the legislator puts into place that's based off the accountability system. The board will meet on July 11th, and that is the latest and earliest that we can meet because of ACT and their flexibility of holding these meetings with Audra and her team, which you'll discuss. This agenda item was brought forward in June today so that you all have a great understanding of what will happen, so that at the July 11th meeting, we'll have a quick meeting, quick decision.
Great.
Audra, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Audra. President Corr, Superintendent Hoffman, members of the board. My name is Audra Amata, and I'm here today I sent a lot of materials, well, I think it was a lot of materials in the board packet. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but just do a high level overview of our standard setting process, which occurs anytime that there are new standards and a new assessment. So we are embarking on many standard settings coming up this year and next year as we have new assessments in our state. So what is a standard setting? It's the process by which we select cut scores. And you're going to hear that term a lot. You're going to hear it in accountability. You're going to hear it in a lot of places, but it means a point for which we determine, make a determination. And so for assessment, we're going to determine the cut scores for the proficiency levels that will be used in our accountability system. And so I just want to make sure and touch that on that a little bit, just because you hear cut scores in other places and we're not talking about the same cut scores. So a cut score that you decide for another project or program is not the cut score that we talk about when we're talking about assessment cut scores either. Also, typically you set cut scores one time during that life of that assessment so that you're not changing that, so people know the target they're working toward. So we have been, as long as I've been at the department, which is 10 years, we have not changed cut scores once we've set them and they've been adopted by the board for any of our statewide assessments. So digging just a little bit deeper into the standard setting methods, there are going to be two different methods that will be utilized. The extended modified ANGOF method will be used for AZ-SCI, our science assessment. And again, we're working in partnership with our vendor. This is a very common and utilized method to set standards, especially now for science, which is newer in many, many states. They have their next generation science standards, or in Arizona, we have our new science standards, which are based on the K-12 science framework. And so that's the method that they'll be using, and all of the participants will be trained. There's a whole day of training on what that method is and how that method will be conducted. And I think you saw some of that material in the packet. ACT uses a different standard setting method, and it was briefly mentioned earlier, and that is the empirical standard setting, which talks about the probability of a student getting an A or B in their college coursework. And so that's very different. The extended ANGOF method looks at the difficulty of items on the test and puts them in order, and then sets like a mark of where they think students will be able to answer that are highly proficient, where they're able to answer that question if they're minimally or partially any of the levels that we have set. So these are two different varied approaches, but these are two very different assessments. And so I think that's important to keep in mind. That's why we're doing these different approaches. When we had the menu of assessments, we set cuts for accountability only for ACT menu, and we use the same approach. So schools are familiar with these cut scores and this method and this approach as we had used it for the menu of assessments. Now at that time, the menu of assessments was only using those cuts for statewide accountability, but it was through bonus points. And this will be a bigger shift because now it will be for proficiency. And after the standard setting, about 6 weeks after that, we will meet with ACT and educators and set the descriptions for Arizona about what each of those cuts that were approved and made describe and mean for students that are in those levels. And so I think that's where we can take some of that feedback earlier heard about the messaging. But I want to also make it clear that when students receive their ACT reports from ACT, our state proficiency levels will not be on that report. So if you remember, or you have children, they get a report from ACT and it tells them where they are and their probability of getting into, having an A or B, that will still stay that way. It's only for accountability, our statewide accountability, that these cuts will be applied for. So again, I think that language, that messaging has to be clear to our field. I think that's everything on that. Oh, I just wanted to mention, I know we have new board members, and so we have also what we call a TAC, or a Technical Advisory Committee. And for our assessment technical advisory committee, it is made up of national experts. We have assessment and content experts from across the nation. Most of them, well, all of them are at universities across the nation. So we have the Colorado University, we have George Washington, we have Ohio State University. There are some of the members on our TAC are professors there, the experts in their field. So that is who guides us when it comes to any assessment decisions we make for Arizona. We go to them and say, what does this sound like? What does this look like? Are we on the right track? So both of these methods have been presented to our TAC and approved to move forward and working with our vendor. And I just wanted to bring that here to you as well. Next slide. So I think one of the biggest pieces that's really, really important is that our panelists will be comprised of Arizona educators. For science, we'll have educators in grade 5, 8, and 11, both content specialists as well as experts with EL and special education backgrounds. For ACT, we'll have content specialists and local higher institution representatives. So we've been working with our partners in the state to try to get some people from their universities, colleges to be a part of our panels as well. And we're looking to have 18 panelists across. We're going to have ELA, science, and math. So we'll be setting cuts for each of those content areas. So when I come back in July, that will be the recommendation based on those content areas that the panelists have made to us. It's a lengthy process. It's a week-long process that they'll go through this. They get to see the data. They get to make their recommendations. Then they see the data with those recommendations, and they get to see where our state students would have fallen in those different cuts. So for example, they could see that 50% were in the highly proficient level. And then they can say, well, maybe that's not right. So they can go back and they can adjust and meet consensus again and adjust again. So that is how that process works. So it is, they get 3 rounds of going back and forth with the panelists that they're working with. It's not something that they just look at for a minute and say, this is where we want it, this sounds good. And again, they'll be setting, determining cuts for each of our performance levels, and we have 4 performance levels. Next slide. I already mentioned this a little bit, the impact data, it's really important as we've been working with, our partners across the state. We have talked about, what impact data will we bring to these meetings. And for Arizona Science, we are going to bring specific information from our spring administration. This is the very first time that Arizona administered this test. We also will not be able to bring in information from Arizona, our Ames Science. It was a very, very different test, very, very different standards. And so also Arizona is very unique in that we have a grade band assessment, which means that in grades 3, 4, and 5, the assessment is at grade 5 and assesses the content in those grades. So it's very different. Other states do it differently. So we don't have as much impact data for the panelists as this is our first time doing it for this assessment. For ACT, we are going to look at local community college and university requirements for admission, because we know that that test is also used for college entrance as well as scholarships, and then other state scores who utilize ACT as their statewide assessment and what their cuts have been set previously in other states, just as some information to share with the panelists. That is all that I have for you today.
Any questions? Yeah, Superintendent Hoffman.
President Core, board members, we're just so lucky to have Audra leading our assessment team and her expertise. I do hear that from when I talk to leaders in other states of how important it is to have someone, having someone like Audra leading our assessment team we're just so grateful. I was thinking it would be it'd be helpful for board members if you could talk just a little bit more about the new science assessment, or just like the background of how it is. So like you mentioned, so different from the Ames science test, but I think that would be helpful background information for all of us.
Great, absolutely. So this assessment is very different. We we've been working for 4 years on this assessment, building this assessment. We started with analyzing the standards and what do these standards really mean and how had they changed from the previous Ames science standards. So we had previous standards since like 2008, so they were quite old, and they were really measuring just skill, kind of retell information about science. It wasn't really about doing science, it was about just knowing science. And so our previous assessment was really just basic multiple choice, like, which one, deals with photosynthesis, this one, a tree, very, very basic. Our new standards are much more rigorous. They really intertwine. They're three-dimensional, so they have content, they have cross-cutting practices, they have the domain, and then they have science and engineering practices. So those are all stacked on when you're working with a standard or an instruction, which means that when we go to assess that, we're not just assessing, do they know what something a part of photosynthesis? We're now really asking them, have you ever seen anything that's gone through photosynthesis? What do you know about it? What has to be a part of it? So our questions are not multiple choice anymore. There's some, but most of them give them a stimuli or phenomena. And they then have questions around, they give them lots of pieces of data, and they have to take all of the information that they're given, take the question, and then do some analysis and answer that question, layered on with those cross-cutting concepts and science and engineering practices. So this test is very, very different, and I think in some ways, gets to some things that maybe students aren't able to memorize, but really gets to practice and do. And I know that when students are engaged, that they love that. And so I think this gives us maybe a little bit better demonstration of what they know and can do.
Great. Yeah,
President
please.
Court.
Member Haley, and then Member Kravickas, please.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I really appreciate it. As you all are developing the cut scores, how will it relate to the NAEP? As the NAEP is often sort of looked at the gold standard, and individuals then look to Arizona where we fall within that.
Yep, so the NAEP is the National Assessment of Educational Progress, and that is a nationwide assessment. So all of our states participate in that. It's a sample of our states, so it's not every student, but we definitely mirror what we call, like, NAEP is considered the gold standard, so we mirror the assessment practices. So when we're developing items all the way through standard setting, I actually reached out to confirm with NAEP which kind of standard setting did they do when they did their NAEP standard setting. They have cuts. Their cuts are called basic and proficient. They're different than ours, but that determines where the students are. And they did a modified ANGOF, I believe, as well approach. So very similar to what we're doing for our science assessment. NAEP assesses students in reading, math, and science. So not ELA. There are some ELA components to it, but it's given out as reading, math, and science. But we follow those best practices in assessment design and development.
President Corr, I'm sorry, just to piggyback on that real quick too.
Yeah, please.
When we had Ames as our statewide assessment, one of the critiques of Ames was that we were showing a very high percentage of our students proficient on the statewide assessment, but the NAEP tests were showing much different lower percentage. So when we transitioned out of Ames several years ago, and I don't know if this is maybe where you're going with your question as well, there was a more concerted effort that the newer standards and the standards set on the assessments didn't mirror Ames, but that we were as rigorous as Ames expectations. And that kind of tied in with the standards that Audra was talking about. But
thank you. And we can absolutely ask our vendor partner to bring in some Arizona NAEP data. I can bring that into them to the panelists and show them where Arizona 8th grade, because they do 4th grade and we do 5th. So we can show them 8th grade. We can show them the 4th grade and let them see that NAEP data. And again, they're very different assessments, but just where as a nation or as Arizona, these are where kids are performing. That's something else that I'll piggyback on. That was a good point catcher, just about when you set new cut scores over the first year of an assessment, typically they tend to go down much lower. So we will see a big difference from Ames to AZ-Sci, and that's very, very typical. And as you progress and become more familiar with your instruction and teaching and assessment, that tends to raise.
Any other? Member Kravickas, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, members. First of all, I want to agree with Superintendent Hoffman. I've had the luxury of working with Audra many times over the years, and she is indeed a rock star. So I wanted to say that at the outset. My question is also kind of just a theme you'll hear from me as we move more into the accountability conversation. I struggle with the idea that cut scores that we would ever look at impact data to determine cut scores. Because then typically what I've seen happen in the past, and we're kind of seeking some kind of bell curve distribution, where I feel like as a state, we should be determining this is what we think kids should be able to know and do, very competency based, and measuring how many kids can know and can do those things, rather than trying to get some kind of impact data to mirror what we think it should be. And so, to make it a more specific question, Audra, I don't know if you were speaking separately of the two different tests, the ACT versus the PSI, but I heard at one point that cut scores would be used, that the TAC would be looking at them to set those scores. So that was one concern I had. I don't know if you want to address that or not, and I have a second one too.
Yeah, Member Correcus. So yes, we give impact data so that we can make sure, again, you don't know where they're going to be, and there's some people have never done this before, and so they might think, oh my gosh, this test was so hard. We actually, for Arizona, for the AZ-PSI test, they are going to take the test, one of those grade level tests, and so that they can get more familiar with that. And they might think, this test is so hard, we have to set the proficient cut at only at this level, and that means that now it means that no one is proficient or everyone is proficient. And so we give that data to show them where they are with the cuts that they made first. We then separately they see before NAEP data or other data.
I appreciate that answer. I guess I'm sorry, would you?
I don't know if they see that data before or after they're doing their first cut, their first round. I think they just make their first round without any information, and then other information is shared with them to make sure that they understand the whole bigger piece and process of what this means for our entire state.
Thank you, and I apologize for interrupting. My internet is going on and off, so I thought you were done. I apologize. And in that instance, and I appreciate that answer, wouldn't the bigger question then be if the standards were set appropriately and the assessment was measuring it, rather, because and obviously I would never want for 0% of kids to be proficient, but if that were an outcome, wouldn't that alert us that maybe the standards and the assessment were more of the issue rather than the proficiency number? In other words, I feel like if we set standards and hopefully they're more competency based as we move forward, and we say this is what we think we want kids to be able to know and do, then the data needs to just fall where it may. Am I missing something in that?
So no, I understand what you're saying as well, but again, this is going to be used in lots of other ways. So I think this is where sometimes that difficult decision about the assessment was designed to measure how well students can do. That's what the test does. But now that we set proficiency scores and we're using it in accountability, it means something different. Okay. And so I think we have to consider all of those pieces when working with that. This is the process that we've used for all of our other statewide assessments. They've always had impact data shown to them. When we did AC Merit, we brought in ACT data to show that if you put the cut here for highly proficient, these are how many students in Arizona that scored a 21 would be highly proficient. That's where a 21 in the ACT that would be highly proficient on Arizona, to show that our test was as rigorous as those students who are showing a 21, which is the ACT benchmark, and many colleges use a 21 for college admission.
Thank you, Audra. And to that point, at least from the outside, obviously my opinion didn't matter all those years. I had concerns about all the time that data was used to do that. Because again, it felt like we really weren't saying this is how many kids are doing what we think they should be able to know and do. But my other question or concern as we move forward is the comment about the cut scores being for accountability being different. So you may need to walk me through that more, not just today or maybe in the future with staff. I have a philosophical concern, but very practical concern is it's so confusing to parents, as you mentioned. It's just so confusing to the field when they're used differently.
Are you talking about like the ACT 21 versus like what they would be, like if they would be highly proficient on for accountability? Okay.
Yeah, And I will say that I very empathetic to Mr. Bjornstadt's comment of how I don't like that language either. But I'm also worried that they're getting conflicting messages when they get that score report and the mom and dad get that score report and it doesn't maybe mirror what we're adopting as per.
And that was definitely a big discussion at the standard setting that we had for the menu of assessments for ACT. The panelists at that time, they were really, really concerned that if they set the proficient cut too low, then that would be sending even more mixed messages. For example, if our colleges, Arizona State, U of A, and AU accept a 21 for their entrance college entrance exam, and we set proficient in Arizona for accountability at an 18, you're not proficient in the state, you're not proficient considered in the state, but you are to go to these colleges. What message is that sending? Or vice versa. So those are all the things that those panelists take into account. And that is why they are shown some other data out there so that they make sure that everything aligns and the messages are how they will message that once those decisions are recommendations.
Thank you, Audra, for tolerating my questions. And I'm guessing there'll probably be more. As much as you could look into a crystal ball, which I know you kind of can't, but I'm assuming you have more frequent conversations with the vendors, obviously, than I do since they're none. But most of these tests have become test optional, ACT and SAT. And while I really appreciate the fact that we're asking our higher education institutions what they're using, I'm wondering in the future if those tests are going to remain optional and if that still remains a relevant ballpark.
Right. So I don't know in front of the crystal ball, but what I do know is that currently that is our state assessment, and we need to use that also for statewide accountability. And so whether they are not used in the same way that they intended to be used by those colleges, I don't know about that. But those are all things that, conversations that everyone else is talking about and asking about as well. And I just wanted to clarify or add some clarity to your comment about alignment, the test and the standards. We're required to do an alignment study, and we actually have an RFP out right now to bring in an external party, not our vendor, not us, to do an alignment study with AZSI. They'll take our test and they'll take our standards. They'll bring Arizona educators and national content experts for science and look at our standards and our assessment and determine the alignment. And so just so everyone knows, you're looking for strong alignment or weak alignment, and when there's weak alignment, you're going to be asked to make improvements to align that test better. So until we have that, we won't know that answer, but that is all happening this summer. So we have standard setting happening, we have alignment happening. We're a busy group over in assessment.
So speaking of this summer, why don't you give us a little preview of what we should expect on July 11th? Just give us a little insight.
Perfect. I think there might have been a question from Member Clay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry, Member Clay. Please go ahead.
Not a problem, President Kaur. I just had two things. One was an objective question, which is, do you have any examples of the questions? I would really like to see those because of what you're basically saying, that they're more 3D. They're not as flat as the old questions were. So I just would like to see that if you have any examples of those. So that's the first question.
Yes, Member Clay. Yes, we do. We actually have posted on our Arizona State Assessment webpage. We have a sample test that anyone can go in and look at the questions and use the platform that the test is given on.
Okay, so could you send that link to us so we don't have to go and look for it? Because I'm really interested in that.
Member Clay, I'll send that to you in the staff update.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is, it's not a question, it's just a concern. My concern is definitely about the language of the cut scores. As you know, students mostly, they drop out of school, and this is what basically the Gallup poll has told us. They drop out of school because they lose hope. And words are very, very, they can be damaging or they can be motivating. They can cause a kid to lose hope or to say we can do. I know maybe to an adult that may not mean much, but I have my youngest child is 23 years old, and 33 years old. She's 33 years old. And one of the things happened when she saw her scores, her math scores, and some of the things that were said behind it, the language behind it, she was done with math. It took so long. Even when she went into college, she already had the block there of she's horrible at math. She's never going to accomplish, anything as far as math is concerned. I mean, she's a nurse now, but that was so devastating. Those words. So I just want you to just take in consideration the language that you use, so that our kids aren't demotivated, because we have to motivate them, and we don't want them to lose hope. So that's just my my comment about that. Other than that, yes, I'm really liking this. I'm really interested. I think it's going to be great. But a child does not learn unless they have that heart first. The analytical comes second, but the heart, them knowing that they can do something or feeling that they can move forward, the littlest thing now can make them feel differently. The littlest thing now really defeats our students as far as their feelings. So, and not feelings as if they can achieve. So I just wanted to say that, and please keep that in consideration as you move forward.
Thank you, Member Clay. Member Burton.
Yeah, Audra, thank you for this wonderful presentation. You mentioned that you're in the process of doing an alignment study with AZ-Sci. Is there a standards alignment study with ACT?
There is.
Okay.
And so we actually did alignment study with them last year because that was what we did with the menu. So we carried that forward. And I don't know if it's on our website yet. I'll have to double check. I know there's been a lot of things going on with posting all of that because we didn't want to confuse it from menu to this, but it has been finalized. And then in addition to that, what the field was really asking us was for like a crosswalk. They used the term crosswalk. And so we actually did receive, it's more than a crosswalk. It's an educator tool that takes the ACT standards, because ACT is not written to our state standards. It's a national assessment. It's written to their own standards. And they take our standards and they made a bunch of tables to show this is an ACT standard, this is Arizona standard, there's a little X to show that that standard is being addressed on the ACT test. And so that was actually just published this week, actually June 8th. I think June 8th.
Can you send that to us?
Yes.
So have Alicia send that. That's great. Thank you. That's great information.
And so we will be messaging that to the field. We told them that it was coming this summer, that we would have it. And so they're very excited about that. And I'm trying to get, we have our first ever state assessment conference in September. And I'm trying to get ACT to come and present on that and show educators how to use that tool and how to use, what they do with our state standards to show them that what they're doing is good. So working on that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I think you asked me a question.
No, I want to make sure that, and any other questions or comments? Yeah.
I was just going to ask. Oh.
Yep. Who is that?
It's Julia.
Oh, yeah, please go ahead.
Sorry.
No.
Thank you, Audra. I really appreciated this presentation as well. 2 questions for you. One, can you talk a little bit about how, when you're thinking about sort of the alignment between both the test and the standards, how, if at all, you're looking at standards also, obviously, clearly understanding we have Arizona state standards, but how, if at all, you're looking at next gen science standards as well, and sort of incorporating that, if at all, into any of the process, especially as we think about alignment and looking at cut scores down the road. That's question 1.
Okay, Member Marison. Yes, so the K-12 science framework is the framework that the next generation science standards were built upon. And then, so I look at it as the Arizona framework, next gen, and Arizona standards. And so we both built off of the same framework. So our science standards are similar to next generation science standards, yet uniquely our own.
Great answer. The second question I had is, I'm really pleased to see that the focus is really going to be on kind of non-multiple choice questions. Could you speak a little bit, is it just open-ended response, or just a little bit more about the type of question? Because that clearly is going to kind of improve the rigor of the assessment.
Yes, Yes, Member Meyerson. In our sample test, I think you guys will find that very, very helpful. We designed our sample test to show each of the different item types that a student will come across in the assessment. So we have a sample test for all of our statewide assessments. And then within that sample test are each of the item types that they'll come in they'll work with when they're taking that test. So they're called technology enhanced items, most of them. We still have multiple choice, but they're not the same old multiple choice that we're used to, like A, B, C, D. There could be more answers. It could be choose 2 of those. So it's very different than just straight multiple choice. Yes, yes. There's other ones where you're dragging and dropping something in boxes. You're categorizing things, all predators or things like that. So there's that. There are sliding scales where you have to slide things across to show, match a chart or a table or a graph. So just more interactive than just straight multiple choice. But I would encourage you guys to look at the sample test and see the different item types.
Correct. And then very quick final question, apologies, but that just made me think of, as you think about sort of, we always like to think about how are we getting our students ready to understand sort of the different types, making sure that they have familiarity before they're taking any sort of assessment. How do you think that these types of questions align with something like an AASA that, again, giving kids the flexibility of being able to move back and forth between those 2 types of tests? Just curious for any comment on that.
Member Meyerson, that is absolutely our goal. So currently we have one vendor for all of our statewide assessments, which makes it a lot easier so that different vendors have their unique take on a drag and drop or an inline question. And so that means that you would have 2 different ways to do that. By having one vendor, all of our assessments are with the same kind of type of technology enhanced item. So they're not going to have to jump to one to the other. So what we did is we built AASA first. And so we looked at that assessment and we said, we have these item types. These are the same item types that we would want on this test. And if you really want to introduce another one, it has to be really, really good and a reason why we would want to introduce a new item type on a specific assessment. So we try to really stay away from that and just keep with what we built with AASA.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Excellent. Now I think we've reached the point where you might be able to give us a quick preview of on July 11th, what we expect to accomplish on that date.
Perfect. So on July 11th, prior to July 11th, you will have an executive summary explaining the process in a little bit more detail. I'll work with our vendor to craft that. And then we will come with actual cut scores for each of the grades, each of the content areas. So you'll see 4 performance levels. It's usually like in a nice little chart, and it'll say in Arizona, we use minimally proficient, partially proficient, proficient, and highly proficient. We're keeping that the same through all the assessments so it doesn't confuse parents. I think there was like many meetings by the state board at the time to determine the names of those levels. Different states have different names for them, but that is what Arizona has used for several years now. And then you'll see for the content areas, so ELA, and you'll see by grade, each of the cuts, so that you won't see any other data. You'll just see the cut that has been recommended by the panelists.
And Audra, we're going to e-session for that, correct?
So yes, previously we've gone into executive session because everyone wants to know what those will be because they want the data, they want the information. What happens after that is once they're approved by the board, or if they're approved by the board at that time, then I would let the vendor know that they can run, only AZ side, they can run the data. And that's when they'll run the data based on those cuts and make their nice reports for their schools and their districts that will show them how many students were in each of those different levels. And then that goes on to Wendy's team and accountability.
Exactly.
And for ACT, no rerun of no data, no nothing. Their report is their report. It's just for accountability.
Fantastic. Well, I will join the growing ranks of your fans and express my appreciation for your work on this and previously. Great stuff. I appreciate it. Thank you. Move us on to 5B. This is presentation and discussion regarding implementation of recommendations from the board's Move On When Reading Review and Recommendation Report issued in December of last year, 2021. Director Williams.
Thank you, President Core, members of the board. Item 5B is being brought back to the board from the March State Board Event meeting. Some members had asked us to do some digging and some review and reflection. So Deputy Director Maiden has done a lot of work with Sean Ross at the department. And so Catcher will walk us through this agenda item. And then if board members have any questions or concerns, feel free to ask. And then I would anticipate that this is like the starting of additional conversations around move on when reading and early literacy, which will continue into the retreat and into the fall as we build our legislative agenda.
Thank you.
President Core, Vice President Burton, and Superintendent members, very well, and similar to the last agenda item, this is very much a sort of foundation laying for some potential future action items that are coming before you. As a quick refresher, the board in December issued a report on the Move On with Reading program at the direction of the legislature. That report included some recommendations. Subsequently, legislation was introduced and passed and signed that included some of those recommendations and frankly, the low-hanging fruit, the smaller, more technical changes. It excluded, and the executive summary has them listed there, several recommendations that most of them were funding related or required funding supports and kind of fiscal impact. And we'll get into a little detail about some pieces there that might not have. Superintendent Hoffman outlined in her update, actually, one of those recommendations was for an online clearinghouse, and ADE provided some money to Valley Sun United Way, partnered with Read On, who will be able to, in part, use some of those funds to help support that effort. So that's great. Not necessarily something I would advise the board taking off of its list of potential to-dos moving forward, because there might need to be some sustaining funds to support that after those federal funds go away. But still a positive development there. So for those items, and again, I'm not going to go into detail on them, they're in the executive summary and the whole report's attached there, but for those items, some things that the board can consider that do require funding, things the board can consider moving forward are, of course, the current budget that is being negotiated right now. I would advise that that's probably a ship that has sailed, but because they haven't adopted the budget yet, it's entirely possible. More realistically, the upcoming budget, which this board will have to submit a budget request in just a few months for the next fiscal year. That's an opportunity for the board to express support or even request for funds to support some of these items. And then, of course, there's still federal COVID relief dollars out there that the board can advocate use of to pursue these items. Those are things the board can consider, as Alicia had mentioned, at the retreat possibly, or subsequent board meetings. And think about if you have questions on any of those items, funding, I'm happy to try to answer those as we move forward. The items that potentially don't need funding, we worked with Sean Ross's team, the early literacy team, who's been a great help. And just as we gave hat tips to Audra, who's been a great partner and worked very well with us, and I appreciate all she does for us. For me personally, also Sean Ross, I have to give a hat tip as well. He helped me work on a lot of this. One of those possibilities to pursue without a funding is from member Kravits's request around, that was in the board, it was the full board's request at the time she had really driven it, was potentially to disaggregate statewide data by the 13 federal disability categories. That's something that we're in talks with the exceptional student services team, assessment accountability teams at the department to see if that's something that can be teased out. A full request, which would probably require some funding supports, would be to do that with all the local benchmark data. The reason that would require a bigger project is we just don't have that data. So statewide data, that might be something that's more possible, and something that we try to keep pursuing, and we'll keep working with the teams at the Department of Ed to see how we can make that happen. And if there's subsequent board votes that are needed, then you'll see those in August or September. The other part that is something that could be done without funding, or maybe with less funding, I guess, is the second part of recommendation 2A, which was to ensure that all parts of the assessment system are accessible to students with disabilities and to require schools to develop a plan to ensure that assessments are available to students with significant cognitive disabilities. So there is an option for the board to amend board rule, which has things around the K-3 reading program, which is also Move On With Reading. It's the same thing but different names. To amend that rule to require schools' literacy plans to include their plan on how they're making sure their assessments are available to students with significant cognitive disabilities. There is a bit of a catch with that, which is that ADE collects all those literacy plans from every LEA that serves third grade, second, first, and kinder students through a portal, a literacy portal, and that portal is IT generated, so there's some costs associated with making changes to that portal. And there's some information there on the timing of how that would happen. And I would expect the board wanted to pursue that in August or September. We can start working on the rules, which, as you know, take a couple months. And then ADE we can start working with them on how to figure out where to find those funds and implement that and we'll come up with more details on what that implementation plan will look like as we keep working on them. This is just sort of, again, kind of broad strokes on what we're looking at. And then, of course, those other funding items, and they do get funding, will also come with their own implementation timelines. Like, for example, fully funding the swarm, the department will need time to find people to do that and do all those things, good things too. So those all come with their separate implementation timelines, but part of what we're on those. Right. So that's all that I have for you today. Not an action item, again, to sort of lay the foundation, but I'm happy to answer any questions or provide any other information that might be helpful as members think about this heading into the retreat.
Thank you, Catcher. Any questions?
I have a really quick question.
Yeah, please, Member Clark.
On the recommendation 4A regarding the clearinghouse, the $10 million that was given to Valley Sun United Way in partnership with Rihanna, Arizona, is there like a timeline that shows like this is when this is all going to be up and running? These are the resources that are going to be put on here.
President Kaur and Member Clark, there might be. I would need to check with the department and/or Valley Sun United Way or read on about like what, because they might have included that in the request of the department, or the department made that a condition. I'm not sure, but I can follow up to that.
That sounds great. And as part of that, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And that fund, that $10 million is not only for the clearinghouse. That's just one piece. I'm sorry.
And then as part of that, I'm assuming it would say, because it says it's in part fund an online clearinghouse, that it's clear like this is how much is for the online clearinghouse. This is how much is being spent with, on administrative staff to put this together, the vendors, like it's line item, how that's all spent in our 650.
I'm not sure at all.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Member Kervikis, did you have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. And thank you, Catcher, for bringing all these to the board's attention. As you may have remembered, as not as a board member, but as a constituent and a mom, I brought many of these to the state board. I believe it was almost a year ago now. And so I'm glad they're here. And I just wanted to give some background on some of them and why I felt they were important. One is on the need to demonstrate that all parts of the assessment system are accessible. It's my understanding, and I'll always look to Audra to correct me on anything assessment-wise, but there's a federal law saying that too, that any district-wide assessment that is used or statewide has to be accessible to all students. So what I'm really saying is that in their literacy plans, they just need to demonstrate that because it's already a requirement, and acknowledging that having them accessible to students with significant cognitive disabilities is probably a reach. That's why I put the language in there, a plan to do so, knowing that it would probably take some time. And I'm also hoping, by the way, that most of that can be provided by the vendors already. Hopefully the vendors are already ensuring that they're accessible. So hopefully they could shoulder some of that responsibility. Two, the disaggregated data. I appreciate the distinction between the statewide assessment and the local assessments. And quite frankly, when I wrote that, I was only thinking about the statewide assessment. I hadn't really thought about the local. And the reason I did the statewide is because I know that data already exists. I know that's something that the state could already do pretty easily at the statewide level. Again, just statewide level by 13 disabilities. And I just want to pause for a moment, and you're going to obviously you've seen this as a common theme for me, and partly it's because students with disabilities is not a monolithic group, right? And especially when you think about reading, the way teachers are going to instruct a student with the visual impairment how to read are very different. You're going to instruct a student with the hearing impairment how to read. And my hope is that if we get this statewide level broken up by disabilities, we as a state, as a board, and the department can really begin to engage more community members like SARC, like Foundation for the Blind, in these conversations to really help us address the goal of making sure that all students can read. And third was the research piece of it. And at that time, I think the language said that qualify for exemption. And I've had the privilege of speaking with Superintendent Hoffman about this. If there's any way that there's resources out there to really take a look at the long-term outcomes of the students who've been retained, the students who were exempted, and the students who were moved on but just not reading. And really looking, because as we've talked a lot about on the accountability sides, growth is so important. Are they still making growth? It may take longer than third grade, but are they eventually learning to read? And I wrote a little article just recently, and I'll share with you all the anecdotal story at the outset of that article. As you know, my daughter has a significant cognitive disability. We were at a basketball game, and this is what prompted this. We were at a basketball game, and it was halftime, and she wanted a soda. We were going back into the gym, and she stopped, and she read the sign that said, "No food or drink allowed in the gym." And she laughed, and I said, "Yeah, you better finish your Sprite." And it occurred to me at that moment that this was something that when she was born, people told me she would never be able to do. And did it take her longer than third grade? Absolutely. It took her a lot longer, but she's there and she can read. And we know the incredible research that talks about if students aren't reading by third grade, what those outcomes are. But I would also tell you that it's still important that they learn to read at all. Because for my daughter, it's a safety issue. She can go to the restroom by herself because she can read men and women. She can read stop and go. She can read the sign that tells her she better finish her soda before she goes into the gym. So I just wanted to share with you that story so you would also know why I feel so strongly about some of these. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Kurvikas. Appreciate that. Other questions? Catcher, I appreciate you teeing that up for us. And again, likely to be revisited in August during our retreat. So I appreciate that. I'll move us on to item 5C, presentation, discussion, possible action regarding the review of the Arizona Administrative Code regarding the Standard School Counselor Certificate. Director Williams.
Thank you, President Core, members of the board. Item 5C is brought back to the board as a request that came from the April board meeting pertaining to a denial of a certification consent item action. That didn't make any sense, but everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Anywho, so again, Deputy Director Beta did a great job of following up on the board's request, and he will provide some overview of what he was able to determine.
Appreciate that, Catcher.
President Core, Vice President Burke, Superintendent Hoffman, and members. So we did after that meeting in April in Idaho. We had a meeting with the Arizona School Counselors Association, ADU certification unit. The chair of the board's certification advisory committee, who advises this board on certification rules and would, if a rule change on that item would come, would go before that committee. And had a meeting on that individual appeal in that case, in addition to the rule writ large, at the direction of the board, and the consensus coming out of that meeting was that the rule that was most recently amended in 2019 was done in a way that struck that appropriate balance between making sure people are appropriately prepared to enter the field whilst ensuring that there aren't any unnecessary or undue burdens. However, there were some recommendations that came out of that meeting about increasing communication with hiring districts and charters about the requirements for the certification, which it sounds like in this case, the hiring district was not clear on, but also other ways to structure their counseling staff or other types of staff to still provide services to students without having a certification, and it is an optional certification as well. And also increasing communication and work, the department's certification team and EdCraft team will work with higher education to ensure that they are properly communicating with their students going into those programs and be clear that and it is on the website for that program, but being more clear that in communication between ed prep programs in the higher education institutions and other degree programs that maybe don't need a certification about the outcomes that might be coming. So the action item here in front of you today is to encourage ADE and the School Counselors Association to do that communication. And we'll continue, as we always do, continue monitoring appeals or issues that come up to see if other changes or any changes are necessary for the requirements for certification. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions before I seek a motion? Yeah, Member Haley.
Thank you so much, President Kaur and members of the board. I just would like to say thank you, Catcher, and the rest of the SBE team for engaging on this issue. One thing that I love about Arizona is that we have created multiple pathways to become a teacher and leader. And I understand that, and I appreciate the recommendation of increased communication between the educator prep programs, degree certifications, and other types of programs, certainly within the universities here, but also with the districts so that they can be better equipped to serve the educators that they choose to hire. I understand that the Arizona legislature is considering legislation to give perhaps the SBE additional authority related to certification. And I just, in the event that the policy is passed before the end of session, I look forward to working with other members on the board and with SBE to figure out how we can ensure that we create as many awesome, amazing educators and leaders to support our students here and that throughout the state.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments before I seek a motion? Then do I have a motion to recommend that the board encourage the Arizona Department of Education and the Arizona School Counselors Association to increase communication to schools and educator preparation programs as outlined in the executive summary? Do I have such a motion?
So moved. Member Haley moves.
Member Haley, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Member Clark, thank you. Any other conversation? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Fantastic, unanimous. I will move us on to item 5D, presentation discussion regarding legislative affairs. The board may take action to support, oppose, or remain neutral on specific legislative proposals. Things are beginning to happen. I'm sorry, that's me. Catcher, do you want to talk to us? So folks stop looking at me as I try to sign my watch. I turned off my phone, but not my watch. Help me, Catcher, help me. Start talking.
Vice President Burton, Superintendent Hoffman. Yes, we were in our internal optimism. We're hoping that this item would be a session wrap-up item, but it is not. The legislature is still in session, and so it's just an update. There is attached, if you sign in assembly, you can see the bills still moving through the process or possibly anything. I'm going to go into detail on those, but I will have an opportunity to give you a quick update on the budget. We met with the legislative committee, which is the same as board leadership, earlier this week to talk about where the budget's at right now. I'll give a quick update on it. I'm not going to give you the whole budget, but there was a spreadsheet that was leaked earlier this week, and usually that means the budget is imminent. It doesn't seem like that's the case this year. So I'm going to give you some information about the budget items for the board, and with the caveat that it doesn't sound like it's imminent. So take it with a big grain of salt. Hopefully, if a budget does pass, I don't think the board's budget items are the linchpin between members' votes that I've heard anyway. But just still take it with a grain of salt, and especially probably more time to wait. And then also, I think it's probably a good reminder for what the board's budget request was, or for new members what it was in the first place. So the spreadsheet does have some funding or items for all of the board's requests and most of what was in the executive budget. So the board had requested something like 1.1 million and 6 FTEs. The executive had recommended, I think, like 900 some thousand and 4 FTEs. And that's essentially what's in the spreadsheet. There's 1 FTE short from the spreadsheet, but I think that's a technical mess that we're trying to run down to make sure that that's the case. Very briefly, it's 1 FTE and about $500,000 to help manage the caseloads on educator discipline. And a big chunk of the reason why it's not $500,000 for that 1 employee, it's to help hire more talented people like Kim to help process those cases on the adjudicator side.
Right.
They expanded the investigative units. We have more investigators after last year, but now we have a logjam happening after they're done with the cases and adjudication. So the board requested help there, and that's reflected in the latest spreadsheet. I should mention that spreadsheet represents an agreement between majority leadership in the House and Senate and the governor's office. And as I mentioned before, I don't think the votes are there for the entire agreement yet. That's where it's at. There was funding to support, again, at the board's request, processing ESA appeals. This is the part where there's funding for it, but the FTE is not reflected in the spreadsheet. Again, I think that's an oversight, or it's just a spreadsheet, so it's not in full detail. So just running down to make sure that that FTE goes along with it, so we can actually, I think if it weren't there, we'd probably have to hire it. There's also an FTE and funding for someone for constituent services, which is something that was in the board's budget request, because the board gets a lot of questions a lot of times from parents who are just trying to navigate the K-12 system. The executive sort of expanded the scope of that a little bit, and the spreadsheet reflects that, to also have the board carry out public awareness efforts for open enrollment and school choice. That was actually a statute that was passed last year. We have not been doing it because it was subject to appropriations. We didn't have appropriation, but this would satisfy that. So presumably, that's why it's $150,000 in 1 FTE. Board could have the flexibility, depending on the specifics of the language, to pay somebody up to that point with employment-related expenses mixed in there, or potentially pay someone a little bit lower and use the remainders of those funds for those public awareness efforts, whatever that may be. And then policy development. There was a request from the board for support on policy development to put us, well, not really in line with other policy type boards like ABOR. ABOR has many more people, but to help support the work of the board on policy development on a couple items that you have today. There was one item that was not in the executive or that was in the executive and in our budget request that was not here, and that was raises for our investigators. However, there is a statewide employee, just all statewide employees getting a 10% raise in the spreadsheet. That more or less, I haven't had a chance to really dig into the numbers, probably is about the same, maybe more, maybe less, but it's close. And I think negotiations centered on the statewide employee raise. Some agencies are getting more targeted higher raises, but that probably captures that request. So again, with all the caveats, we'll see. They have until June 30th, the end of the fiscal year, to adopt that budget before I don't think our agency constitutes as an essential government function. So we potentially have to figure something out for at least, maybe we'd be able to operate the first week after the fiscal year. After that, there might be some significant shutdown activity. I am happy to answer any questions on the budget or the bills in there or anything else legislative, or just keep this on.
Thank you. Ketcher, any questions for Deputy Director Baden? Okay. I remain hopeful.
President Court, would you like to break for lunch at this point, or do you want to keep going?
We'll work. I think we're nearing the end. We're going to continue right through.
All right.
Which leads us to item 6, call to the public. I do not believe we have any who wish to speak during this call to the public. Is that correct? Okay, then I will move us on to the consent agenda regarding certification and enforcement actions. The consent agenda for enforcement actions, I would hope can be taken as a single motion. Do I have a motion to approve items 7A1 through 7A16, as well as item 7B1? Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Member Burton, do I have a second?
Second.
Member Haley. Member Haley,
Second.
thank you. Any discussion, conversation? Seeing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Moving on to item 8. Once again, a call to the public. I believe we received a written comment, but is there anyone wishing to speak to us?
President Corr, no, we will have individuals speak with us when an agenda item is called at the end.
Exactly. Thank you. Then I will move us on to agenda item 9, general session certification and enforcement actions. These are negotiated settlements. I would like to take these items in a single motion. Do I have a motion to approve items 9A1 through 9A5? Do I have such a motion?
So moved, Member Hagerman.
Thank you, Member Hagerman. Do I have a second?
Member Clark seconds.
Member Clark, second. Any conversation or discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. Fantastic. I will move us on to 9B. Bear with me. 9B is presentation, discussion, and possible action on findings of fact, conclusional law, and recommendations of the Professional Practices Advisory Committee to revoke the teaching certificates held by Paloma Anderson, case number C 2021-01131 for a period of 5 years. Do I have a motion to adopt the findings of fact, conclusional law, and recommendations of the PPAC to revoke any and all teaching certificates held by Paloma Anderson for a period of 5 years, and that all states and territories be so notified?
So moved.
Member
Thank
Haley,
you.
second.
And Member Haley is second. Any discussion, conversation? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Move us on to 9C, presentation, discussion, and possible action on the findings of fact, conclusional law, and recommendations of the Professional Practices Advisory Committee to revoke the teaching certificates of Christopher Germain, case number C 2020-000385 for a period of 5 years. Do I have a motion to adopt the findings of fact, conclusional law, and recommendations of the PPAC and revoke any and all teaching certificates of Christopher Germain for a period of 5 years, and that all states and territories be so notified?
So moved.
Member Burton, do I have a second?
Member Hagerman, second.
Member Hagerman, second. Thank you. Any conversation, questions, discussion? Hearing, seeing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. I'll move us on to 9D, presentation, discussion, and possible action on the findings of fact, conclusional law, and recommendations of the Professional Practices Advisory Committee to suspend the teaching certificates for Dianna Gutierrez, case number C 2020-000708 for a period of 1 year. Do I have a motion to adopt the findings of fact, conclusional law, and recommendations of the PPAC to suspend any and all teaching certificates of Dianna Gutierrez for a period of 1 year, and that all states and territories be so notified?
So moved.
Member Clark, do I have a second?
Second.
Member Clay, any conversation, discussion needed? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. I'm going to move us on to 9E, presentation, discussion, and possible action on the findings of fact, conclusional law, and recommendations of the Professional Practices Advisory Committee to revoke the teaching certificates of Freddie Jordan Jr., case number C 2021-000229. Do I have a motion to adopt the findings of fact, conclusional law, and recommendations of the PPAC to revoke the teaching certificates of Freddie Jordan Jr., and that all states and territories be so notified.
So moved.
Member Burton and then Member Kervikas, I'll have you as second if that's all right. Okay, thank you. Any conversation or discussion needed? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. 9F, presentation, discussion, and possible action on the findings of fact, conclusion of law, and recommendations of the Professional Practices Advisory Committee to revoke the teaching certificates of John Lampkin, case number C 2021-006820 for a period of 5 years. Do I have a motion to adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommendations of the PPAC, and to revoke any and all teaching certificates of John Lampkin for a period of 5 years, and that all states and territories be so notified?
So moved.
Thank you, Member Clark. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is that you, Member Burton? Member Burton, second. Any conversation, questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. 9G, presentation involves presentation, discussion, and possible action on the findings of fact, conclusion of law, and recommendation of the Professional Practices Advisory Committee to revoke the teaching certificates of Kelly Marciu, case number C 2021-011-036 for a period of 5 years. Do I have a motion to adopt the findings of fact and conclusion of law and recommendations of the PPAC to revoke any and all teaching certificates of Kelly Marciu for a period of 5 years, and that all states and territories be so notified?
So moved. Member Hagerman.
Thank you, Member Hagerman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Kavickas? It was close. Any discussion or conversation needed? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. 9H, presentation, discussion, and possible action on the findings of fact, conclusion of law, and recommendation of the Professional Practices Advisory Committee to revoke the teaching certificates of Halima Williams, case number C 2020-000386 for a period of 5 years. Do I have a motion to adopt the findings of fact, conclusion of law, and recommendations of the PPAC to revoke any and all teaching certificates of Halima Williams for a period of 5 years, and that all states and territories be so notified?
So moved.
Member Haley, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm gonna have to go with Member Hagerman with the second. Any conversation or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Okay. 9I, presentation, discussion, and possible action to approve or deny the request for a rehearing for Jennifer Friend, case number C 2020-002084. Director Williams?
Thank you, President Core, members of the board. In these types of agenda items, the board usually allows the respondents legal to provide about 5 minutes of reasoning, and then that's followed up by 5 minutes of state. If that's what you wish to do again today, Dr.
I think we will follow our previous precedent and do just that. So please.
So Ms. Sydney Oshinsky is the representative for Ms. Friend.
Good
Hi, Sydney.
afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So my name is Sydney Oshinsky. I've appeared before some of you before, but today I'm here from Tate & Hall Law Firm representing Ms. Friend. And I want to be very clear about what I'm asking today. I'm not asking for you to lessen Ms. Friend's punishment. I'm not here to, let Ms. Friend off scot-free. I'm here in the name of fairness. I'm here to ask you guys to give her a fair shot, because I would argue that the materials that you've been provided show that Ms. Friend was not provided with a fair shot at her PPAC hearing. You have my pleadings, you have the state's opposition. I don't want to bore you guys with all of that, so I will keep it brief. But
we know that the hearing was not fair based on a couple things that are in the transcript. Some of those being some very concerning comments made by the PPAC members. One PPAC member equated being on the Adult Protective Services Registry to being on the Sex Offender Registry. Now, I'm a criminal defense attorney. I know that that's not true. Most people know that that's not true. They're obviously very different. And so those types of comments cause questions as to the type of proceeding. And if they're making these types of comments as a basis for their decision, was the proceeding itself fair? And so we have these rules and administrative codes to maintain fairness and maintain fairness in these types of proceedings, because this is Ms. Friend's livelihood. And so I would ask you all to think about the different arguments that I brought up in my motion. And while the state is correct that Ms. Friend did waive her right to have an attorney at the beginning of the proceeding, during the middle of the proceeding, she did ask for an advocate. And now I'm not even here to argue and say her right to counsel was violated, yada, yada, yada. I'm here to say that you shouldn't need an attorney to make sure something's fair. It should be an objective proceeding. And those types of comments show that it wasn't. There were certain pieces of evidence relied upon in that proceeding that was skewed. And I'm not saying that's anyone's fault necessarily. However, it wasn't given both sides, and therefore a fair decision could not have been made. And some of those documents were an indictment and a sentencing memorandum. Now, again, I'm a criminal defense attorney. I know what these things are. I know the difference between a charge and a conviction. And the state's opposition states that it's wrong for me to say that the PPAC might not know the difference. But in my practice, I have come across several people who do not know the difference. In fact, I even write letters for my clients, for employers, to explain the difference between being charged with a crime or being indicted and what you were actually convicted of. And now there's a saying, you can indict a ham sandwich. And I think that's true. And so they relied on the indictment, which is a list of charges that are much more severe than Ms. Friend actually pled guilty to. And that difference was never noted. It's concerning to see an indictment full of a bunch of felonies, I'll admit. And if you don't know the difference and the difference isn't explained, how would you know that's not what happened? And so the other document that they relied upon was a sentencing memorandum. And what this is it's a memorandum you file with the court. It looks super official, right? It has the court's heading on the top, and a normal person might pick that up and say, oh yeah, this is a court document, but that's not a finding. I can say whatever I want in a sentencing memorandum to advocate for my clients. Now, I wouldn't make things up, but you get to skew and provide argument. And so these were relied upon. They're not relevant in the sense, and that's a legal term and a rule of evidence, and the proceedings at the PPAC are different standards in the criminal justice system. I'm the first to admit that. And however, relevance is at the core of everything, and these types of proceedings are no different. And these documents were not relevant to what actually happened, the actual conduct. The prosecutor wrote the sentencing memo. They weren't there. I wasn't there. And it would be as if everything I provided to you in my pleading was just accepted as fact. So I'm arguing that that should not have been allowed in, and that was a violation of the rule of evidence. And amongst the other types of things that I brought out in my pleadings created an unfair hearing for Ms. Friend. And so again, it's about fairness. And I don't believe that you should place that fairness on an attorney. I think if you don't have an attorney and it's an objective process, it should be fair. You shouldn't have to have an attorney to make sure that the proceeding is fair. And so today I would ask you all to afford Ms. Friend that opportunity for a fair hearing.
Thank you.
Kathleen on?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, so my turn?
Yes, please. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Okay, President Corr, members of the State Board of Education. I'm Assistant Attorney General Kathleen Brantingham, and I represent the state of Arizona in Ms. Friend's teacher discipline matter. I appeared for the state at Ms. Friend's hearing before the PPAC, and I wrote the opposition to the request for hearing, which you were provided. Ms. Friend's request for rehearing is simply a plea that the board give her another chance, premised on her argument that the hearing process was unfair to her. Yet none of Ms. Friend's arguments about the process being unfair justify a rehearing of the matter. And I will also say that contrary to Ms. Friend's counsel, I have a lot of faith in the PPAC's process and their members' experience. They do see these types of cases. They do see criminal matters presented to them. And when they have confusion about it, they ask. Trust me. The board's responsibility, discharged through the PPAC holding a hearing, is to provide a fair process for Ms. Friend and every educator against whom allegations of unprofessional conduct are made. The process afforded Ms. Friend was unquestionably fair. First, Ms. Friend chose to waive her right to have an attorney present, represent her at the hearing. Second, the PPAC is not a typical lay jury. The PPAC members are exposed to court pleadings and other documents frequently in hearings, and they certainly know the difference between an indictment and a plea agreement and recognize when a pleading is submitted on behalf of the prosecutor or the defense. Third, PPAC members frequently express their reasons for voting on the recommendation of discipline to this board on the record. And quite simply, when considered in full context, there was nothing inappropriate about Vice Chair Simick's comments that show she was biased or that there was any other unfair aspect to the process. Similarly, and fourth, there was nothing improper about Investigator Reuter's testimony on the reason for the prosecutor offering Ms. Friend a lesser charge in the plea deal. The statement only came up in the context of reading the prosecutor's memorandum, which clearly stated why the prosecutor offered the plea he did. Ms. Friend's last argument that her conduct was not unprofessional and did not discredit the teaching profession and is not egregious enough to warrant revocation of the certificate is simply not credible. The facts found by the PPAC at hearing and adopted by this board at its March 28, 22 meeting are that Ms. Friend was named a fiduciary for a disabled veteran who was not competent to manage his own affairs. Ms. Friend moved that veteran into her home. The veteran became unhappy with Ms. Friend's management of his finances and complained to the VA. The VA investigated and found financial irregularities. Legal proceedings commenced against Ms. Friend. Ms. Friend, through her then attorney, stipulated to the finding to be placed on the Adult Protective Services Registry. The finding is a public warning and confirms that Ms. Friend was named on the APS registry because she, and this is the language that she stipulated to, improperly used or allowed a vulnerable adult's resources to be used for the profit or disadvantage of persons other than the vulnerable adult. It's the state's position that the hearing for Ms. Friend was fair in its process and it achieved a fair result to revoke Ms. Friend's certificate. It's also the state's position that the request for rehearing should be denied. If you have any questions, though, I'm happy to respond to those. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. And Executive Director Williams, do we allow for questions or? Okay.
President Gore, if board members would wish to ask questions of either counsel.
Okay.
Or can do so.
Okay, I always get a little skittish around lawyers, so I just want to be careful. Please don't take that personally. Does anyone have any questions for either counsel? Okay, thank you. So then I will pose the motion in this way, and the board can express its will. Do I have a motion to deny Ms. Friend's request for a rehearing of the board's decision from the March 28, 2022 meeting, as after reviewing the record, all the materials submitted by the parties, the board does not find the reasons presented by Ms. Friend to warrant rehearing under Arizona Administrative Code R7-2709. Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Member Clark, do I have a second?
I second.
Member Clay. Thank you. Any discussion or conversation? Okay. Hearing none, I will Call the vote. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. Someone,
Dr. Kaur, I just didn't hear the.
okay.
board members on the call.
Those of you with us from a distance, real clear?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Perfect. And got a great suggestion moving forward. I think we'll do a raise your hand while you do that too. But thank you. Your votes have been captured. Do you have what you need, Director, Executive Director Williams? Thank you. Motion passes. And that will move us on to item 10, summary of current events, future meeting dates, and items for future agendas. Director Williams, bring us to a close.
Thank you, President Kaur, members of the board. For today's meeting, there's some follow-up that board staff will do. One is sending out some links pertaining to member Clay's ask of Audra, of the assessment things and documents. And then we also had the alignment study that member Burton had requested, or Vice President Burton had requested for ACT, so we'll send those out. We also have a future agenda item for ESA, quarterly report conversation, discussion, potential action. So we'll work on fitting that within the board's meeting schedule. There'll be future communication from me and from our office pertaining to the July 11th special meeting. Again, that will just be to set the cut scores as Audra described. More than likely it'll be in the morning as some of the members have flights to catch in the afternoon. And then our retreat in August. I think that pretty much sums everything up, but I'm happy to take any questions or concerns with that summarization.
Hearing and seeing none, I thank you for that. And we will adjourn the meeting at 1:22 p.m. Thank you all. Appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.